So I think Joe Biden is still giving his press conference, answering questions, trying to calm everyone down, because we're not at the point where there's been even a House Democrat saying he should resign outright, like not even step aside for re-election, but actually step down as president. More Democrats are stepping up saying it's not going to be you. George Clooney's done it. All the late night hosts are saying no to Joe Biden. And Joe Biden keeps saying, well, I'm going to run anyway. Okay. The first thing he says in this press conference, which was delayed by an hour, mind you, was that Donald Trump was his vice president. I am not kidding. And we have the clip, and he said, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump if she couldn't have done it. And everyone was just like, oh. And then like an hour before that, he introduced Ukraine's President Zelensky as President Putin, someone he admired and was very strong, and then went, he's going to beat Putin. And reporters called him out for it. And then this is wild. I mean, at the press conference, he's like, they gave me a list of people to call on. I'm like, the whole thing's scripted. I don't know what he's thinking, but I don't know how anyone believes this is not all part of the plan, because there's no way Biden would actually step out and be this bad, unless that's just the way life is. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And we do have an update on Rep. Luna's inherent contempt against Merrick Garland, but a lot of big news pertaining to what's going on with Joe Biden, whether or not he steps down, and where this country goes. And then we do have some information on mass censorship, Elon Musk threatening to sue these big ad buyers. That's a big story. Before we get started, my friends, you got to head over to mypillow.com. Use promo code Tim. You got that website. The phone number up there right now, 800-544-8939. You guys know Mike Lindell. He's the MyPillow guy. And as you know, he's got no support now from the big box stores because they've all come after him. Cancel culture, it's what it is. So to help turn things around, they're having a $25 extravaganza, and they're sponsoring this show. When Mike started MyPillow, it was a problem solution one product company. Since then, with the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, and some you may not even know about. To get the word out, they're having that $25 extravaganza. They got 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, just $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. 6-pack towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, $25. For the first time ever, premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size and loft level, and king size, $25. It's not going to last long, so go to mypillow.com, use promo code Tim. And their phone number is, they got another number here, 800-925-90996. Again, promo code Tim. And I also want to shout this out. If you go to timcast.com, next week, we will be at the RNC for a special live show on July 18th, and Mike Lindell will be there. So will Luke Rudkowski, Hannah Claire Brimelow, Libby Emmons. I will be there. I don't know if there's any tickets left, but you can go to timcast.com, check to see. We'd love to see you there. It'll be epic. But also, click join us, become a member, support our work directly. We are going to have a very fun, members-only, uncensored call-in show. And I know all of you want to call in, but only a handful of you can. So make sure you sign up as a member right now. Submit your questions. You've got to sign up. If you're signing up as a new member, it's $25 a month, or it's sign up at $10 for at least 6 months. We have to have this gatekeeping because we get, wackaloons who try to come in and cause problems. So we're trying to keep out the rabble who are trying to be disruptive. But if you sign up now, you can submit your questions, and then at 10 o'clock, we will have that uncensored show where you can actually join in and talk to us and our guests. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. We are joined by some lovely gentlemen from the Lotus Eaters podcast. We got Carl Benjamin.
Hello.
Who are you? What do you do?
I'm the director of LotusEats.com, one of the hosts of the Lotus Eats podcast, and I've come over to say hi and hang out with my friends.
It's been a blast. We played a couple of games of Magic the Gathering.
We have.
We did. I lost one. It's my own.
You did win one.
I did win one. It was my own deck, so it means I won both. But it's good to see you, Carl. Good friend. We're always happy to have you. And Connor's here as well.
Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate it. I mean, we promised this since the last time I was on, and we will save the dueling for tomorrow morning. But I'm looking forward to that too.
I know, because Phil's here.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see you two gentlemen. I love you both to death. I am Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary. Hannah Claire, what's going on?
I'm happy to be here. I know nothing about Magic the Gathering. I think I'm here as tonight's diversity hire, so I'm happy to be here with all of you. We should get started.
A bunch of white men. That's all it is. I guess I don't count. Yeah.
No.
Well, you're sort of Asian
mostly.
and
you code
from
white
Africa.
I code
white. So.
All right. So right now, I think Biden is actually still giving his press conference. But let's talk about the nuances here. We have this excellent clip that just went out, I think like 15, 20 minutes ago. Defiant L's, did he just call Trump his vice president? Let's roll tape.
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
Gee.
Let's start there. Look,
I mean, I think we should hear him out. I think he's making a good point. He picks Trump because he's qualified to be president. Yeah, go on, Biden.
There is no limit to the amount of money I would pay to have Donald Trump walk out and address at that moment and say, "That's right, Joe." Just roll with it.
If you look at the Libs of TikTok's account right now, there is a wonderful picture of I guess it's Donald Trump and Kamala Harris kind of mashed together. It's brilliant. Take a check.
Is he going to apologize for misgendering Donald Trump? Because I hear that's a bad thing.
He doesn't have to apologize. He's the first black female president, which he said a couple of days ago, right? I mean, his gaffes are really getting bolder and bolder. Honestly, it's sort of entertaining.
It would be if he wasn't apparently the leader of the free world.
Sometimes when things are going wrong, you just have to laugh as they all come crumbling down.
It's kind of wild. There's speculation that there won't be a second debate because the first was so bad. The Trump administration does not want to give Biden an opportunity to recover from that. So now people are saying he might just say no and argue against it, which means
no on humanitarian grounds.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, and he would. He'd come out and say, just be too mean, can't do it, and make that the reason. And that would twice highlight Biden's frail mind and capabilities. But so this is what they're trying to do. The reason he's probably doing this press conference is because they know his polling's in the gutter. They know that he has to come out and look stronger, but every time he does, he just looks worse.
Well, there was that report that an unnamed staffer in Biden's administration had said, actually, we're kind of hoping that he embarrasses himself because that's the only way to get him to realize it's time for him to step aside. I mean, it's from The Atlantic. It's unnamed. I obviously, you take it with a grain of salt. But if that's the internal dialogue from the people who are, putting him on stage and providing him with a list of reporters to call on, it's not looking good.
I like the idea this is accelerationism, though, because I decided to torture myself right before this broadcast and pull up the front page of the New York Times. And the top stories were the George Clooney op-ed and everyone saying Obama's probably behind this. The fact that they were that brazen means they're almost lending credibility to the fact that they want Biden to go. Then 3 unnamed sources, again, they could well be the homeless man sitting in the corridor, but if they keep pushing it, then it means that they want it to be visible. And then also the idea, and I know this happened later in the press conference, that they were embarrassing the Biden campaign for pre-scripting questions and giving them to all of the news agencies. Mm-hmm. So if they're wanting to make the press conferences look illegitimate, when he's standing up there saying, this is the best press conference you've ever seen, almost Trump-like language, and then have Biden have as many opportunities to make gaffes as possible. It's like they want Biden to get out as quickly as possible to install someone instead.
A major piece of this news cycle was that the Biden campaign was feeding questions to these radio hosts who would then ask him questions they wanted asked. And one of the first things, literally the first thing Biden does when he's going to questions, he goes, I have a list here of who I'm supposed to call on. Yeah. I'm like, how is... This is on purpose, right?
But even then, the list, when he called on the people were critical of him. Are you going to step down? Is basically
That's why I'm like, it's got to be on purpose, right? Why would he call on them?
But the recurring question is, are you going to step down? And Biden's response was, no, you're going to have to carry me out as a mummy, right? Like, for some reason. And the thing is, if it's this bad when it's clearly scripted, imagine what it would be if it was unscripted and live.
Just off the cuff. Oh.
Yeah.
This is why I think this is the scripted.
So maybe, I mean...
I can bask in the glory that is finally Joe Biden is being embarrassed and the media is telling everyone his brain is fried, and then go to my family and say, nah, I told you so. Or I can get even deeper into the conspiratorial and say, Biden is in on it. And the reason he waited this long was to keep RFK from winning the Democrat primary. He was the incumbent. He's the heir apparent. He's going to stay in. They're not going to replace him. And then once the primary is over and we're 6 weeks from the convention, now they can go, oh, well, I guess Biden's got to go. And that blocks RFK, who's now got an independent campaign and VP. There's no populist candidates who can come in. And more importantly, it gives Democrats the opportunity to... What they're now doing is advocating for a secret ballot among delegates. So no one knows who delegates voted for, just that they're going to go to the convention. The primary is nullified. The delegates are going to cast a secret ballot for, I don't know who, Michelle Obama. And so I can be, I gotta say, I think that one makes more sense than Biden intentionally went out and went, I have people I'm supposed to call on specifically, even though I was criticized for doing this. Like, what?
The thing is, Biden seems to be insanely arrogant and doesn't seem to realize how this whole thing looks. And I think that the Democrats are a kind of female-coded party.
Yes.
And they've come to the point now where they're being publicly embarrassed by his behavior. And if there's one thing that this female-coded party doesn't want to see, it's this kind of public embarrassment.
But then why have the debate?
Well, I haven't got all the answers, I'm afraid. Who knows? These are things that are all behind the scenes. But I think that there's a faction within the Democrats that is pro-Biden that has got a kind of dictatorial control of the party and doesn't want to let it go. And now they're all getting publicly embarrassed by Biden's repeated gaffes, and they're not sure what they're supposed to do. I mean, the fact that Jon Stewart is coming out and mocking him, like, that should be a sign it's long past time to go, and yet he's still here.
If he doesn't go, and I think that the reason that he's not gone is because at the end of the day, it is the president. I mean, he is the president, whether he's in charge of his faculties or not. He is the president, and there is no one that can actually force him out other than
Other than Jill Biden.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I think it's Jill Biden, and I think it's Hunter. And if he doesn't go, the all of the criticism by all of the Democrats it's not going to be forgotten. The fact that there's been so much criticism recently, but everything was so pro-Biden and he's sharp as a tack, et cetera, for so long. I've said this multiple times on the internet. This is a national security threat. Like, this is something that makes every country on Earth less safe because he's in charge of the nuclear arsenal of the United States. If he wanted to, he could unilaterally decide to launch a nuclear first strike. Now, whether or not they would actually do it, I hope they wouldn't, but...
Declare the wrong country.
Yeah, I know.
And he's done that before. When he was giving a speech and he kept saying Libya instead of Syria.
Yeah.
But we can tone that down a little bit, Phil. I know it's an easy go to be like the nuclear football, right? But the fact they can order a commando raid accidentally on the wrong place is scary enough. Look at Afghanistan.
Yeah, and so to your point, there are ample ways for this to go terribly wrong and throw the world into significantly more chaos than we're already in. And furthermore, if he were to somehow be elected again, right, and stay in office, there is no question in my mind that means that China and Russia are going to have a significant opportunity to push their agenda, whatever it may be. Now, I'm not saying they're going to take Taiwan and blah blah blah, but you can guarantee that they look at Biden and they say he is not capable of being the commander in chief. You just look at the way that Blinken was treated when he had the summit in Alaska with the Chinese. They were incredibly disrespectful.
Same with the Saudis.
Yeah,
Saudis have been
exactly to your point. Like, the rest of the people talk about how the rest of the world didn't respect Donald Trump and et cetera, et cetera. That was all just cope because Donald Trump actually did inspire fear, if only because they're like, he's kind of crazy. He might do some crazy stuff. Oh, yeah. You know?
Here's what I'm saying, right? After 2016, Bernie Sanders, he should have won. They super delegated him, and they gave the questions in advance to CNN, all that stuff to make sure Bernie could not win, and they were terrified. Trump was not supposed to win at the RNC. The establishment was supposed to be in control, and Trump, much tougher than Bernie Sanders, would not back down. 2020, same thing. They had to have these centrist establishment candidates all bow out at the same time and endorse Joe Biden because Bernie was a serious threat. They could not have another convention, especially when you had, what was it, Dean Phillips? Was that his name?
Dean Phillips.
And you had RFK Jr. saying, we want on this ticket. And with people knowing Biden's frailty, even outside of the big press, there's a strong probability I think RFK Jr. would have won.
And he's hugely unpopular in his own party.
They iced RFK Jr. out, said, you can't run. Biden is the incumbent. We don't want you. He's the one who's going to. So he says, fine, I'll be independent. Then at the very last minute, the Democrats are now proposing, Jon Stewart is now proposing a solution, whether there's, and they're not stating it directly, but this is a solution to their Bernie Sanders populist problem. The conventions, at least right now, and I'm willing to bet from now on, are going to be secret ballots where you have no idea. This is, the Democrats already had a problem with superdelegates. You guys familiar with how that works?
Yeah.
So outside of the primary votes, So you've got the delegates assigned by the primary, and then super delegates are just people like Donna Brazile, I think, and like Hillary Clinton, who choose who they want to be the nominee, regardless of what the people think. Now, because new information, Jon Stewart said, he called it new information, we should have a reassessment, a stress test on whether this candidate can actually do it. Democrats are arguing they should go to the convention and cast a secret ballot, and it'll be for someone else and no one will know, meaning there's no primaries anymore. Yep. It means the establishment uniparty will just decide who the candidate will be, and then you vote. Yeah, that's kind of like China and North Korea.
It's the UK, actually.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, because in 2019, Boris Johnson was elected and then cooed out on the basis of reputation destruction because he had parties during lockdown. So then it was put to the Conservative Party members whether or not they wanted to choose Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss. And Rishi Sunak was clearly the establishment international banking candidate.
He was a banker himself.
Yes, he worked at Goldman Sachs, if I remember correctly. And then you had Liz Truss, who, for all her faults, was very popular with the party. She was elected, and then within 49 days, she decided to do a marginal tax cut and also wanted to lower immigration behind the scenes, was blackmailed by the banks and stabbed in the back by her own party, and Rishi Sunak was installed instead. Now, if the Democrats want to go with that, I might suggest they look to the UK and look at Rishi Sunak delivering the Conservative Party their worst defeat in about a century and reconsider.
But I don't think they can consider it from any other perspective, right? I think there's such internal chaos in the Democratic Party that they can't look beyond, the doorstep of Congress. It was fascinating to me that Joe Biden sends this letter to them, a sternly written letter saying, I am going to run, I am running, this is Monday. And then Nancy Pelosi days later goes on an interview and says, well, whatever he decides, we're just waiting for him to make the decision. Sooner rather than later would be good. He already made a decision. Biden is very clear. He is staying on the ticket. What did he say in his George Stephanopoulos interview? Until the good Lord takes him out of the race or tells him to leave or something like that. Like a little dark there, Joe.
Wow.
But he's not going to give this up. And so there's a level of if they were being strategic and considering how these types of strategies had affected other countries, maybe, but they're dealing with a really obstinate old man who is not leaving this position and they don't know how to navigate their way out of it.
Let's jump to the story from the Post-Millennial. Biden flubs Zelensky introduction, calls him President Putin at NATO summit. Now, I know all of you listening, we know Joe Biden gaffes all the time, and he calls people the wrong names, and he makes up words that are not words. So this is not surprising to you.
He's a lot like Shakespeare.
That's right. It's right. Sometimes he's got to make the word and then tell people what it means. What is surprising is that his own campaign account mocked him for it. We are at the point now where, okay, so, a few weeks ago, we're posting these videos like, that's a weird thing Joe Biden just did. Did he poop his pants? And they're like, that's a cheap fake. Yeah. You've edited that to make that look bad. Now, the Biden-Harris HQ account is literally posting them outright. Take a look at this. They actually posted, President Biden, ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin, he's going to beat President Putin. Zelensky says, I'm better. And he says, you're a hell of a lot better. They're just outright posting these things themselves. Here's the clip.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
I like the part how
he's beating Putin. We got to worry about it. Anyway.
I like how he sounded like he surprised himself.
Right. Like he heard it after he said it and went, did someone just say Putin?
I'm just glad the war's over.
Yeah. Given American foreign policy, in about 6 months, that might be accurate.
The funniest bit about this, though, is Zelensky's reaction to it. You don't see it on this clip. But you can see Zelensky's processing it through the filter of it being a second language. And he's just like, oh, no.
No, I think he's reacting to it as in, what do I say next that doesn't lose me billions of dollars?
You can see the calculation going thick and fast in Zelensky's head.
How many times do you think this is going to get played in Moscow now, where Biden is saying President Putin and then Zelensky has to take the mic next? I mean, it's just humiliating.
The Russian pundits are going to be like, well, to be fair, Putin will be the president soon, right?
Exactly.
But okay, so here's
Even Joe Biden thinks so.
Look, the war in Ukraine. Well, I would like to talk about that too. But why is the Biden campaign website posting this clip? There's no upside.
Because some unfortunate Zoomer has been paid to run this account, and there's just nothing they can do with it. What are they going to say? Well, Yeah, it's out of my hands. It's
like
literally in God's hands now.
It's like Eminem said in like 8 Mile. It's like if you make fun of yourself, you take the sting out of
They're
it.
trying to make this look like, Willy Wonka walking out to the gates and falling over and doing a roll.
Yeah, only he's not going to roll. He's going to like fall directly into a coffin.
I think they've just had months of.
And Kamala's just throwing the soil on top.
She's
like, come on, Joe.
She's like,
She's greased the steps up to Air Force One.
She's ready. No, I mean, I think to a certain extent, this is just the result of months and months of, well, if we do anything to praise Zelensky, that's good. American people like it when we do that. So if it's actually, us saying, oh, Zelensky is better than Putin, then surely they'll let this go. They won't realize how horrible this is for us. It's the only spin I could imagine going on behind the scenes.
I think I think that's it. The idea is like they know it's bad. They know literally everyone watched. They know the purpose of these pressers are to try and build confidence in Biden. And the only thing they can do is own it.
Do you think there's a kind of war weariness in the Biden campaign? Like every day they get up and it's like, okay, yeah, President Putin is ruling Ukraine. Vice President Trump is going to be the best president ever. Yeah, got it. Yeah, it's just another day on the trail. We're just going to get through this. He can't live forever. He can't have too many. He just can't have too many years left. We're just going to get through it.
Like you ever see that meme where Death has got the crane game, and he grabs a guy, and it's like someone would die. And then he's like, George Carlin, is Henry Kissinger even in this thing?
That was the one forever.
Yeah, just every time some famous person died, it's like, and then when someone made the meme when Kissinger did die, and he was like, and it just said, Death said finally, like he got him. Yeah. Biden is what, 2 years past average life expectancy for an American male. It's 79.
He's trying to break his own record as the United States' oldest president. It's just very sad.
Well, every day he breaks the record.
Day.
Every
Didn't
day.
he once
is a new
say
record.
he was in the Senate for 2 centuries? That was one of his gaffes.
I sort of.
Was that a gaffe? Was that a gaffe?
I'm sure he has been haunting the Senate for a long time.
There was a tweet you put out once that said every politician, it was right-wing politicians, but I think this applies, either has werewolf or vampire physiognomy.
Yeah.
And I think Trump's the werewolf, Biden's definitely the vampire.
That is funny. Yeah. Was that? I saw that too. Was that you?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah. That about explains it.
I mean, Zelensky's got the werewolf physiognomy, right?
Putin's definitely
Yeah.
a vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. What is?
It's weird how that maps on, right?
I guess my question with all this too, because we do have more to talk about with Joe Biden's failures and his panic. But while we're here, I'm just curious because you guys are from the UK. Obviously, you got your own problems.
Oh yeah.
And even beyond that, like you're more closely connected to what we're seeing with France. But I mean, like, how does this affect you guys? Do you watch this stuff? How closely are you paying attention
How
to
can
it?
we not watch it? It's the greatest show on earth. Look at this.
Well, we're also a vassal state of the global American empire, so we
Yeah,
have
but-
to. we have
That's
to see
right.
What's coming
That's
out of
right.
central office?
The thing is, like, you don't feel like America interfering in British politics because British politics is just. I mean, American politics is so catastrophic. It's not like you guys don't have enough to deal with. But like, the whole thing is, we just watch with just kind of a sigh. Just be like, right, okay. Biden's done that. Biden's like the Afghanistan thing was just a genuine like moment of like, oh dear, right, okay. America is on a downswing.
Yeah.
America's on a genuine downswing. And the thing is, like one thing that I've noticed that the New Worlders have in a mindset difference from the Old Worlders is the Old Worlders think in just much longer terms than the New Worlders. Like everyone's thinking, oh, what's China thinking of Biden? China doesn't really care about Biden. China's thinking in terms of hundreds of years. So they're thinking, right, if America is at this point now, where are you going to be in 50 years' time? And the answer is probably in a worse position.
You know, one idea I love in sci-fi is like, not even sci-fi, but if we were to launch a spaceship with humans on it towards, say, Alpha Centauri, they'd be halfway there when a more advanced human spaceship would go past them.
I thought you were going to say when Joe Biden leaves office.
I guess my point is,
But yeah, I get you.
it's this trope in sci-fi where it's like the technology would advance so fast that by the time they're halfway, we've already well advanced beyond and we can go faster. Yeah. That's the mentality of China. The 1,000-year plan, I think they call it. They're not thinking about how they're interacting with the U.S. today. They're thinking about, in 20 years, we're going to have A, B, and C, and we're going to intersect with where we think the United States is going to be. What do we need to build to counteract that? Yeah. And by the time we get to that point, and the U.S. is like, hey, look, China just launched a bunch of satellites that are a threat to us. We better, too late, because they already planned for that, and they've already counteracted that.
Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with internationally. So, agreed.
One thing about democratic politics, it makes you very focused on the here and now and the day-to-day constant partisan battle. Well, they don't have that in China. They don't have that in Russia. This is why Putin has actually done as well as he has done in the war in Ukraine. He's obviously been preparing for this. He's kind of like judo flipped the Western economy. We expected to economically crush Russia, and that's actually not what happened. Actually, everyone's food went up. Actually, everyone's fuel prices went up. Actually, everything got a lot worse for us, and things aren't going brilliantly in Ukraine, despite how much men and material and treasure we pour into it. So he's been thinking of this in much longer terms than us, whereas us in the sort of boxing ring of democratic politics haven't been thinking about this in the long term at all.
What do you think happens with Europe and the UK if Trump wins?
Oh, that'll be fun. So there's been a conversation recently because the Labour Party won the recent election and we now have a new foreign secretary, a blithering idiot by the name of David Lammy.
Blithering left-wing idiot.
Redundant phrase, honestly.
Yeah, I know.
If you go...
not all idiots are left-wing, but all left-wingers are idiots.
Point well made. If you go on the account of one of my favourite Twitter anons, Cunley Druckper, he has a clip of David Lammy when he went on the show Mastermind, which, if you're not aware, for those outside the UK, you sit down and you are quizzed on a specialist subject. David Lammy chose his specialist subject and got 0, if I remember correctly, and 1 on the general knowledge.
But he would answer ridiculous questions. Like, he would say something like, "Oh, who is Edward VII's son?" And he would say Edward VI. And it's like, no, that's not how chronology works.
Lines of succession.
That would obviously be at the very least his father, and it's just stuff like that. And
So
not our best and brightest. And now
not only is he not
You're
our
not
best and
sending your
brightest,
best.
we're not.
well, on the topic of Trump, he has made some interesting statements on President Trump before.
Trump's a white supremacist.
Yes, he's a racist, he's a sexist, all this and that. And now he's probably looking at dealing with him. And the suggestion has actually been recently, now that Nigel Farage is an MP, Trump could just go as a maverick. Why would I want to talk to the foreign secretary? I'm only dealing with Nigel. He's an elected official.
be
We could just go
amazing.
round him.
I mean, on a personal level, if Trump came to the UK, he would definitely meet with Nigel Farage anyway.
Yeah.
So it would, even if it wasn't sort of de facto or de jure, it would look de facto like Nigel was dealing with Trump as in an official capacity. So, but the Labour Party is incredibly left wing, and they know that they're probably going to have to make a really difficult, pragmatic decision to deal with the giant orange right wing evil that they've been decrying for the past 5 years. And so that's pretty funny, to be honest.
But what's, for a while, I mean, we can go back to Brexit, right?
Sure.
A lot of people felt that Brexit was like a precursor, not necessarily a precursor, but was like a sign Trump was coming.
It was very much the same sort of thing. The same forces underpinned Brexit that they did with Trump. And Brexit was slightly before Trump. But it was the same kind of populist energy. Wait, we're not in favour of the global uniparty state that's going to manage and administer every aspect of our lives. It's very much the same impulse.
But how's it going over there now?
Oh, terribly.
So should we? So I don't know. That kind of makes me not so confident for November.
Oh,
here,
no,
I guess.
it's not that it couldn't have gone well. It's that we were governed by the Conservative Party. And the Conservative Party are I don't know how to describe them.
Treacherous,
Traitors?
left-wing.
Yeah. Literal, treasonous, weird
I wrong?
deviants.
Corrupt, perverts.
Yeah.
Didn't you guys both just get kicked out of the Conservative Party?
Yeah, on that topic, yeah.
That's because we're not deviants.
Oh, okay.
You guys personally?
Yeah,
Yes.
we personally got kicked out of the Conservative Party.
During former Home Secretary Suella Braverman's speech at NatCon, we got emails saying that you have been removed from the Conservative Party. Please don't share this email. So of course we just shared it.
Was this after your speech?
Yeah.
Because your speech, the speech. If you guys haven't seen it,
It's on my YouTube channel.
Carl gave a speech, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was everything that it should have been. It was absolutely great.
Got another one on the 27th coming up.
I make sure you
Be a
see
banger.
it. Carl's a great speaker. I'm kind of shocked that after that,
No, it would have been exactly because of
It's
that. Because
probably because of the speech. Because remember, like
you can see that I'm like
Real quick,
flabbergasted.
What's
here.
the quick elevator pitch thesis of the speech?
Oh, the thesis of the speech is, look, our country is genuinely falling apart, and we actually have to start thinking about the actual nature of what England is and why it's falling apart. But the thing is, the Conservatives, one of the primary reasons that England is falling apart, and they actively have a plan to destroy it, obviously, which is why things are going so badly and which is why they're going down so far in the polls. Because the Conservative Party are the right-wing party, but of course they're all a bunch of gay liberals, and I mean this, literally gay liberals, and so they who refuse to join the gay liberal parties. And so people are like, okay, well, I'm not going to vote for this, and I'm not going to be lied to again, right? And so, okay, the Labour Party, who are also a gay liberal party, I said, look, we're going to destroy this country, by the way. Vote for us. And so people were like, well, we're just not going to vote Conservative. And what that meant is the Labour Party flooded across the electoral map
with a lower vote share than in 2019 when they were defeated.
with a lower vote share than an actual communist. So that goes to show you how disengaged people are from British politics at the moment.
How does Scotland tend to vote? It's pretty
Communist.
left, right? And Ireland too, I believe, right? And I'm not talking about Northern Ireland.
All the Celts are communists.
It's fascinating to me. It is. It's fascinating to me because I actually find it pretty remarkable when I went to Northern Ireland several years ago, how it's they did not reunify, but the borders opened because of the Schengen zone, and the general sentiment overwhelmingly was Ireland is no longer for the Irish. I mean, I want to stress this. It's crazy. There's bloody death being fought in the Troubles because people of Ireland wanted their country. They wanted their language, right? And I remember when I was a kid, we had close families that I really loved to visit Ireland, and my dad's like, the things that are going on there. Now, there's that viral video, I think it was Derry, is that the name of the town?
Derry, yeah.
Derry, where they ask people, what do you think the most common name in Derry this year was?
Mohammed.
And it's Mohammed.
It was the second most common in England as well.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating for me to see Scotland, right?
Oh yeah.
They will. What is the line? They'll take our
Lives, they'll never take our freedom.
Yeah, and
the reason is they basically have white ethno-nationalism because they hate the English, but in order to have that in the liberal paradigm, you need to dress it up in minoritarian concerns. So they're like, we want Scotland for the Scottish to then become a vassal state of global immigration and
they
the
spent
EU.
so much time
They
fighting, like hundreds of years, thousands of years fighting you, and then they're just like, oh well.
The Scots were able and willing partners in the empire, so Scottish nationalism based on victimhood of the English is nonsense, and that can just go. No, it's a total lie. Every battle, they're like, "Oh, we got crushed by the English." It was actually Scottish troops who were loyal to the crown, right? Because actually, it was a Scottish king on the throne, so that can all die, right? But the Irish, like I grew up. My father was in the Royal Air Force, so I grew up on military camps, and you would have threat warnings, and so basically IRA activity, and they would have things like, look, check under your car, walk different ways to work.
They bombed the Conservative Party conference
Because they bombed Conservative Party conferences, right? They literally tried to bomb Margaret Thatcher, and then Jeremy Corbyn tried to invite IRA to bloody Parliament directly afterwards. And so the fact that the IRA, the militant wing, and then Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA, were obviously rabidly Ireland for the Irish. And the thing is, personally, I can see the logic behind it, right? Yeah, it's the Irish as an ethnic group deserve their own state because I think that's how the old world works, and that's totally normal. That's most peoples require ethnic autonomy to make sure they're not being exploited by another people. That's totally sensible. It makes perfect sense.
Yep.
No one will question it. But now, Sinn Féin are literally Ireland for everyone. And all of the Irish that's Sinn Féin's the Northern Irish Party, but like all of the Southern Irish parties are Irish for everyone. It's no longer just orange and green. It's a rainbow for Ireland. And it's like, wow, I can't believe you guys got sold out so quickly by your own politicians.
Right.
But the thing is, I'm in England. All of our politicians have sold us out. England isn't for the English. Wales isn't for the Welsh. Scotland isn't for the Scottish. The entire UK has been sold out by its political class.
It's fascinating what we're seeing in France with Marine Le Pen's. What's the National
Rally.
Yeah, they're doing really, really well, but they still are up against this leftist coalition. There's
not just leftist, centrist leftist coalition. It's literally everyone against. Macron just destroyed his own vote share to save leftism from Le Pen.
Right. Like, I mean, I'll be like, my view is that the centrists are just leftists with holding up, masks, right? Because this is the power that they lend to. It's the power they want for whatever reason. And my prediction for what happens to Europe, you need only look at the United States. And I think that's the actual plan and has been the plan for several decades. They want to dissolve the cultural bonds of each sovereign country of Europe. So they function more or less like the way U.S. states do, in that the United States used to have, regional dialects, regional diction. And when television emerges, it was it was the thing to do if you were a television anchor who was going national, to eliminate regional diction and make sure you spoke in a way that was like flat. And then the Chicago accent, the Southern accent, you had the Valley Girl. You have all these different ways of talking that have started to evaporate as everyone starts to adhere to the national way of talking. Then, no borders. Anybody can move to any state they want at any moment, vote in anything they want, and then leave right away. Europe, with the European Union, is trying to accomplish what the United States is when all of these sovereign states, pre-Civil War, was much more like the EU, and then the war happens. The famous saying is that we went from saying the United States are to the United States is. That's what they want Europe to be. How do you do that? In the United States, state government is so incredibly powerful, but completely ignored. Nobody pays attention. They don't know who their local reps are. And we could change this country overnight if everyone focused on their local elections, but it is culturally evaporated. This is what they want for Europe.
This is a conscious effort as well.
Absolutely.
They're very clear. I mean, this is why we have a Supreme Court. This is why we have all like different kind of chambers in the same manner as the United States. It's a very conscious effort to Americanize the entire European continent and homogenize the whole thing. But you'll notice that it's not just in Europe and the European states. Even those countries outside of Europe, it's the entire, what they call the international community. And if you plot that on a map, you realize how small a slice of the world that actually is. Yeah. They want this for every single country because what they're trying to do is create a world state. They want to create an international administrative world state that has complete control over all of our countries. And I don't like to talk about the WEF, the World Economic Forum, that much, but because it's not directly powerful, but it's the kind of place where the like-minded people who all want that same goal go to organize.
It's a cocktail party.
It's a cocktail party,
but it's
for
an
these
influential
people
one, yeah.
who all agree on the same subject. And so you can see why people would naturally gravitate and go, well, this is a WEF agenda. Yeah, it is. This is what this is.
Well, on Brexit as well, this is important to note. Keir Starmer, the current Prime Minister, served in the shadow cabinet of Jeremy Corbyn beforehand, even though he doesn't like to think that he did, as the Brexit negotiator pushing for a second referendum. He's a lawyer. He is currently under the thrall of Tony Blair. Tony Blair has taken from his titular Tony Blair Institute, Starmer's government and packed it out with all of his advisors. They definitely want to get back into the EU. And they've already said, right, we're going to do a bespoke deal with Europe. We're not going to undo Brexit. We're just going to get closer to them on trade and on regulations. And Michel Barnier, who was one of the top executives of the EU, turned around and said, well, that means accepting free goods and free movement of people. So don't be surprised if in the next 5 years, Brexit is de facto, if not de jure, abolished.
I've been seeing a lot of reporting on this, especially when reports are critical of Nigel Farage. They basically say it was a dumb idea and it never would have worked, and they're going to change their mind on it and beg to be let back into the EU.
Oh, it could totally have worked if we'd just seen ourselves in competition with the European Union. I mean, the corporate tax rate is the one, the point I always make, because it's just such an obvious one. You know, any pro-Brexit government, when the Conservatives took on the mantle of Brexit, they should have just, I mean, they had this plan for Singapore-on-Thames, which would have been very, very low corporate tax rate, because at the moment, our corporate tax rate is 25%, which is high anyway. But Ireland's corporate tax rate, so the closest country shares a land border with us, connected to the European Union, is 12.5. So it's exactly half, which I don't think is a coincidence.
It wasn't. Janet Yellen and Rishi Sunak collaborated to make a global corporate tax rate, and Ireland dissented.
Right. And so the European Union as a whole has a way of keeping companies right on Britain's border. So when in Britain, if you were to get like money from Google or something like that, it comes from Google Ireland, because they're of course all headquartered in Dublin. And so the Conservatives could have come out and gone, great, guess what our corporate tax rate is going to be? Well, 6.5, 0, whatever you want. You would have, if you wanted to be competitive, you would have come out and really abolished that and been like, right, guys, come over. We've got loads of great talent, loads of great universities, loads of really educated people. We're going to take over. But we haven't done that. And we're instead essentially becoming a vassal state of the European Union.
Well, on that as well, the reason Brexit was voted for was immigration. Okay.
Oh, God, yeah.
Last year, to reiterate to our American viewers, the UK, in a country the size of New York State, let in 1.2 million people legally, with an extra 2 million visitor visas, obvious overstays, and 50,000 illegals. And this was
3 years in a row.
Under the Conservative Party. And so essentially Brexit was punished by betrayal. And because the administrators of Brexit were the Conservative Party, the voters voted for lower immigration, the Remainers wanted to stay in the EU, the Brexiteers and the Conservative Party wanted global Britain. They saw the European Union as a constraint to having not enough Indian, Chinese, Pakistani immigration.
Do you understand? I know you understand exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They are going to decimate the individual culture of Great Britain, so that you have too many warring factions and there will be no unified culture around anything. They're going to do that in France. They're going to do it in Spain. They're already doing it in these other countries. And the end result is going to be to create a flat, static, randomized system, in a cultural system. The end goal of multiculturalism is to make sure that there is no unified force that will be in control or rise up against you. Britain and France will be the same. A mishmash hodgepodge of random cultures and ideas that are in conflict with each other. So that way...
Preaching to the choir, man. We
Exactly.
totally agree.
I disagree. I
disagree too.
I think that you're going to end up because Islam is not a weak.
No, you misunderstand.
Yeah, it's that Tim's describing what they want. You're
Yes.
describing what they're going to get.
Yeah, what they're going to get. Yes.
But if Islam takes over Europe, that is that is fine. The goal is, how do we homogenize Europe so that it functions much like the United States? That each individual country of Europe will not be an R, but Europe is.
Yeah.
And so they bring in as many different people as possible, en masse, as quickly as possible. This will disrupt and displace traditional British values. The British people will be in conflict constantly with their neighbors, so they're unable to do anything. And then your political parties are making sure this is happening, and it will look the same in Britain, in Spain, in the Netherlands, all over the place.
It's going to look like the Middle East.
And that's fine because it gives you a homogenized control structure. So Europe becomes one thing. If they can, if they could make all of Europe adhere to the same language and the same beliefs, they would do it, and they don't care what it is. The way you do that is you burn it down and build it up. So the idea would be, you've got too many people who are British and speak English. You've got too many people who are French who speak French. The Spanish, they speak Spanish, and they don't communicate the same language. Now, it is true that Europe, with its proximity in years, many people in Europe do speak each other's languages and based on their proximity.
There are strong national cultures still.
Right. So you look at the United States and France even. French is dying out in Canada. In Quebec, it's very hard for them to maintain French. We have only a couple places in the U.S. where French is even a language, and everyone is speaking the same dialect now. California and Idaho are the same place. It doesn't even matter anymore. And so we have a lot of problems with the structure of our government, immigration, et cetera. You look at how the United States is. You can pack up and move to any place you want without question, get your ID changed in 5 minutes. I'm being somewhat, I'm exaggerating. You move from New York to Idaho.
No, I get you.
You walk right in, you're an Idaho resident. Boom.
It's crazy, actually, how ready Americans are to just pick up and move to somewhere else.
Technology's made everything too frictionless.
Well, no, it's not just that. This is part of like a kind of uniquely American mindset. When we were at the NatCon convention earlier, and on the Monday, one of the chaps giving the speech was like, "Well, look, if you don't have a particular kind of church in your town, then you go to this other town, and if you can't get there, you go to if you can't do that, you move to another state." And I'm like,
pastor, by the way.
Yeah, it was a pastor. Yeah, he was a pastor, and I'm just like, my ancestors fought with Alfred the Great against the Vikings. I'm going to die in Wessex. My bones are going to be buried there. And hopefully, God willing, my sons will as well. Like this nomadic culture is crazy.
It's not ubiquitous in the United States.
Yeah.
It's places like, specifically like Texas. Texas is full of Texans.
Right.
And they look at themselves as and I consider myself a New Englander.
I would say New England.
Yeah. And because one of the things that you talk about frequently, and
you see what I'm saying, though.
Yes, I do.
This nomad culture is very common.
It's very, very common and very normal, and I think that's partially because of the fact that you can travel so easily from state to state without, and it's been that way for for the entirety of the existence. But like, I consider myself a New Englander, and even when I've lived in other places or I travel, I'm from New England, and part of that is because, like you had said before, the United States is kind of the fulfillment of the English promise, right? Is what that the United States is the for lack of a better term, the fulfillment of the English promise. And I take that to heart. And I feel that because I look at New England and Massachusetts as something that is more than just a place. It's where America started. It's where the idea for America really started in Massachusetts. And even though I don't live in Massachusetts, I live in New Hampshire, just 15 minutes over the line in New Hampshire because of legalities, but I consider myself a New Englander, and there's as much history in New Hampshire as there is in Massachusetts. I mean, I've got a tattoo of Massachusetts on my arm specifically because it's something that I do feel is a part of me. So I don't think that it's something that's totally foreign to Americans, but you definitely have on a point.
But the issue is, we're, what are we, 160 years from the fracture point where the state started to homogenize in such a way. So I look at it like this. We are more nomadic than Europe. it is easier for someone from Massachusetts to go to California and set up a life because it's nearly identical cultures. Now, the weather's different. The laws are a little bit different. Gun control and stuff are, Democrats
the laws
are not really
basically the same. The language is basically the same. The culture, the customs, they're all very, very similar. I mean, essentially in England, it'd be the equivalent of me moving to Yorkshire or something like this, moving to the north of England. People have got a different accent. They've got a few different mannerisms, but, technically, it's way easier than moving to France, right?
Right.
Way easier than moving to Spain.
And France is what, 2 hours?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not even. I mean, depending on where you are.
Yeah. Now it's
entirely different language, different food. They're
Different
smoking
legal
cigarettes and
code.
eating snails.
Yeah.
So we do have different legal codes, and this does matter because some states have constitutional carry, some don't. But culturally, comedy, everything.
Yeah, but in France, it's not just the fact that the laws are different; it's the structure of the legal code that's different.
Right.
You still have common
Exactly.
law across the United States, even if that manifests in slightly different ways. In France, they have imperial law. In the Napoleonic Code is a totally different approach to law.
And so my point is, the only reason we are more nomadic, like we still do have that. Phil's got the Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But we're losing it, and they are trying to dismantle that. Yep. That's why they want to get rid of the Electoral College.
Yep.
This is why they bring in non-citizen en masse to the tens of millions, because they're trying to flatten everything out and make 100%. Idaho will be a name. That's all it will be.
They're exploiting a weakness that we have, because you're saying you're from here, you're going to die here. Hopefully all of your children are there too. And that says that you have a pride and attachment to the area. I'm also from New England.
Yeah.
I grew up in Connecticut, but I actually don't think of myself like if I'm with Phil, if we were in New England, I would never claim to be a New Englander because my parents are immigrants. So I don't have that generational tie to the area. I went to school in Texas. I lived there for years. I do not consider myself a Texan. Being a Texan is a very specific thing. Yeah. They go out of their way to teach their fourth graders Texas specific history. And so I agree. I feel a lot of pride being from New England. It is, the center vein for America in a lot of ways, but we intentionally tried to destroy those regional ties and pride. And I think that is to encourage this homogenization, because we actually want to say, well, being America doesn't really mean anything except you happen to be born in this place. I don't believe that's true.
No,
I think
it's about a set of values.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yes, we will.
Liberalism.
Yes, we will.
So this is important.
Yeah.
You guys in the UK, you go to school and you learn British history.
Nope.
No. I know not now. I'm saying you when you were little kids.
No,
even when we were
Even when you were kids, you didn't learn British history.
No, I did the American Civil Rights Movement when I was 15. My coursework.
When I was in school, I'm 20 years older than he is. And when I was in school, we did do some of it, but it was poor. Right, because the way.
Well, hold on. I believe you in your perspective that you don't think you're getting enough British history.
No, it's not even that. It's the structure and the way it's told. Because if you want someone to genuinely understand something, you tell them a story, right? So you have a beginning, and you have logical reasons for the beginning, then you have the middle of it, and how the thing grew out of its own premises, and then you have the conclusion that logically makes sense to how we got to where we are now. And so that puts it in someone's head, right, okay, now I have a story, a narrative that explains this whole thing. Well, that's not how British history is taught. British history is taught in a very fractured, sort of almost scattershot way. So when you're 10 years old, you'll learn about World War II, and then you'll learn when
Great
you're 13.
Fire of London as well.
Yeah, the Great Fire of London. So it's totally different. It's all out of whack.
Did they teach you about the foundation of England?
No.
You never learned that.
No, I mean,
we had to do it independently. So for example, my history curriculum when I was in secondary school, and I took it as a proper qualification, was the First and Second World Wars, the Cold War, which obviously Britain had barely anything to do with after about 1950, and we also didn't talk about the Holodomor or
all
anything.
modernity.
And then it was slavery, Jim Crow, and civil rights
American
movement.
history.
I'm not joking.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Unreal.
you have it a good vassal state for us.
Yeah,
so I
exactly.
can respect
Yes.
Well, when I took global history as a freshman in high school, it was actually just Asia and Africa. We didn't learn anything about Europe. We didn't learn anything
why
about
would Europe
America.
come up?
The globe.
How would that be important to America?
No, it would be relevant. And also, in all of those stories, like when Europe influenced Africa, it was just that they were colonizers and bad, right? I mean, you can imagine what it was. I think you're right. I think there are huge gaps in history, and it's sort of because of the modern narrative around how history should be presented, what you should know.
Did you learn about the American Revolution then?
Nope.
No. Okay, so
They lost that one, so they don't like to talk about
The
it.
American Revolution isn't actually terribly important in the history of the British Empire anyway.
right,
Right. It's
20-year period and 1,000+ years.
Yeah, but it's not just that. It's we're a world-spanning empire, and it's like, okay, one bit of it broke off. Okay, well that sucks, but we still control all of North America.
And also, like,
Africa,
technically
Asia.
the Englishman won that one anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, but that's the point. Like you can't get a more English name than George Washington. Maybe Thomas Jefferson. What about Samuel
John Adams?
Yeah, or like James Madison. Like there are just such English names. So it's not even like we're dealing with foreign peoples, right? So it's not even that.
I think I'm surprised to hear this, but I guess it does just play to my assumption was that today, I would have assumed that 30 years ago you would learn about your country, but
You would think, wouldn't you?
that being not the case, my assumption, the reason I asked was that likely what's happening today is that they're not going to teach you the history of your country, much like we don't. I can't speak for anybody else, but growing up in Illinois, I don't know what year the state was founded. I have no idea. I don't know about any great battles that were fought by the militia forces of Illinois. We learned about the Revolution. We learned about World War II. We learned about our federal government, our presidents, and the state did not matter in our education. It was not relevant.
In New England, I did have a far more comprehensive education about New England and the history of New England.
And so did I. Because the things they were teaching us were about the Revolution and the early days of America.
And the thing is, in New England, at least, we did it every year, all the time.
Yeah.
It was very uncommon up until I got into high school that we didn't talk about the American Revolution, the founding of the
Field
country. and all
trips
of
were
this
going
stuff.
to Boston and going
Or
to
like walking down the
Lexington
street and they
and
were like,
Concord.
right over there, that's where they fought. I mean, this is just the way it works. But again, Texas is unique in the sense that they teach a specific history there. So.
But I think that's good though.
I do too.
Oh yeah, it's totally great. Like, and the thing, one of the things I'm like slightly envious of in America is you at least have a definite founding myth, right? The Pilgrims come across in the Mayflower, they land on Plymouth Rock, and they get turkeys or whatever from the natives. Like, no, but that's fine. That's fine. You have in your mind like a mythological origin point. There are some people who did something, and because of that, we're here.
Yeah.
We don't get that in England, right? In England, no one in England knows who the first English to come to Britain were.
Really?
I know, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you know?
They made a show about it, didn't they?
No.
They didn't?
No, God, no.
Who was it?
Who were the first Anglo-Saxons to come to Britain?
What, by name?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
Exactly, right?
Who was it?
Wait, I'll tell you in a minute. But the point being, Connor, a proud Englishman, works at Lotus Eaters. We are here to revive an English identity because it's obviously a necessary thing. He doesn't even know.
How dare you?
No, but it's not his fault. It's not his fault. Like this.
Yeah, just throwing me under the bus like that.
I'm not throwing you under the bus, but the point has to be proven, right? Like the two men were called Hengist and Horsa.
Oh no, I do know this. Yeah. They were because it was on Horrible Histories.
And well, thank God that someone
Yeah,
was there to
I was an
denigrate them.
autodidact. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's the point, right? And the story of England is that the Roman Empire had withdrawn from Britain because it was facing internal troubles. And so the Britons themselves, having been ruled over by the Romans, were not warriors. And they were being invaded by the Picts from Scotland, where the Scots would end up being. And so the native Britons sent out feelers to say, look, we want mercenaries. We need people to come and defend us. And Hengist and Horsa brought over a few hundred Anglo-Saxon mercenaries on boats and said, okay, fine, we'll defend you. And it was a guy called Vortigern who offered them over. The Anglo-Saxons defeated the Picts in a bunch of battles and said, right, okay, we've done our, what, are we going to get paid? And Vortigern was like, hell no, you're on your own. And they're like, we're the guys with the swords, what are you doing? And so Vortigern was like, we don't care, get lost. And they were like, no, okay, well, we're staying and we're going to set up kingdoms here then.
And what year was this?
Like the 5th century.
It's okay.
It's a long, long time.
Yeah.
But the point is, England has a founding myth, and not one English child will be able to tell you it.
I think you need to understand that our founding myth is that you are evil.
Sure.
And so let's begin with the great founding myth of the United States. Why did the Pilgrims come? Religious oppression and density and difficulties in mainland Europe, predominantly. Many of these people coming from England, and so it was oppressive. We don't want to be there. These are people who are willing to take 3-month journeys by sail to land on a barren shore because it was so bad there, and then we live and we grow and we're oppressed the whole time by the crown. They're taxing our tea, they're taking our guns.
I hate taxes too, man.
And it's an unfair narrative. It is. And I love the history of this stuff. And did you know that for a very long time, all of our villains in movies, our Disney villains, were British.
Yeah, of course.
It's a very
everyone as well.
It's a funny meme. It's like they all talk like this or something, have some kind of Commonwealth accent. And the fascinating thing is when you actually read the real history of what was going on between the Crown Parliament and the colonists, it's not so stupidly one-sided.
Not at all.
So, like
Benedict Arnold was actually a hero.
No, certainly not. But
really?
this
Depends
is
on your
one,
I did my fourth grade
Okay,
history
just
project
saying.
on Benedict Arnold.
One quick important point. We hear often in the United States taxation without representation, and the colonists were furious about it. And they kept petitioning, saying it's not fair. There's a perspective of Britain that these weren't just blind, evil people being like, you're all slaves. There was, we have spent, because I read an academic article about this. The Crown was upset they had spent so much on the defense of the colonies that it was bankrupting them. And they said these taxes are not about telling you have to pay us without representation. It's that we're the one funding your protection.
Yeah, because we're at constant war with France and Spain.
Right.
This is a constant problem.
The shipments that are coming here are protected by us. You got to pay for it. You got to pay your bills. And the Americans were like, okay, fine, but then we want a seat in Parliament. We want representation, or at least some form of representation. And that was the dispute. It wasn't like it was just evil people trying to oppress, but the simple version of the American myth is we were oppressed by the English.
To rally any kind of revolutionary force, what you have to do is demonize the opposition 100%. To angelicize yourselves. We've done nothing wrong. They've done everything wrong. Therefore, revolution is justified. So
I think one of the things that would be very good for Americans to learn or to understand is how close the United States and because, like I said, the argument that you made really touched me. I found it really, really compelling that we really are an extension of England, and the things that the English fought for and the Magna Carta is directly related to all of our founding documents, and the things that the English fought, would go to fight with their king and stuff. All of that stuff is directly related to the United States, and without England and without the foundation laid by England, you don't have the United States, and people forget that
you're an English country.
Yes, and as much as Canada and New Zealand and Australia are significantly different, we all have a legitimate special bond between the United States, England, and those countries because of the
shared heritage,
shared heritage, and the fundamental foundations that these countries are built.
There were two contrasting speeches at the NatCon we just went to. Monday night was Josh Hawley, and he got up giving a very provocative speech about Christian nationalism. About 75% of it was very good, actually. He's correct. Up until even FDR, America was called a Christian democracy. But he said, essentially, we are like dislocated values, ideas. We're like Wile E. Coyote, just over the precipice, not realizing we've looked down and plummeted yet. J.D. Vance got up on Wednesday. Whether or not he was making his VP bid is still up for debate. But he said, America is not an idea. It's a people with a shared history and a shared lineage. And that lineage is explicitly English. And I remember sitting with you and saying, what you guys need to realize is common law only developed in England. Common law came, as we all know, from Blackstone's formulation.
Yep.
But it took an Englishman to interpret Sodom and Gomorrah as if there are 10 guilty people, if there are 10 innocent people, then the whole city should not be destroyed, rather than as every other civilization interpreted it, which was burn all the gays. And that's why America ended up a bit better.
Yeah, and that is something that is one of the things that is special about the progeny of the English, the English society, the fact that the English sensibilities were passed down, it does make the United States and England inseparable, in my opinion.
100%.
And
that's why so quickly after the Revolutionary War, you notice how quickly the Americans turned on the French.
Yeah.
Right? No, it's amazing. The French are the reason you guys got your independence. And it literally is a matter of decades where people are like, okay, I fucking hate the French.
Well, it's because those same people thought of themselves as Englishmen just years before.
Well, you were fighting for the rights of Englishmen.
Yes.
That you brought with you across the sea. I mean, and the fingerprints of England just everywhere in this country. Like the very nature of a Bill of Rights comes from England. Yeah. We created the first Bill of Rights. And so when you're like, okay, we're independent, what do we need? We need a Bill of Rights. Why do you need that? Well, because it's what we had in England. That's why.
There were several of the founding fathers who didn't think we needed a written constitution.
Oh, just like England.
Yeah, exactly. And so the other guys, I think it was was it the Federalists or the Anti-Federalists? I always mix them up. But one faction basically said, "Hey, oh yeah, right. We know what you're going to do with power. We know what everyone does with power. Write it down."
And I tell you, that was a good idea.
It was.
It doesn't really matter anymore.
Well,
Not
hold on.
anymore, but like, it was a good
but
idea
you're
for a
less
long
English.
time. Yeah, yeah.
The erosion of our protections does not mean those protections were not a good idea in the first place, because what we've seen now is we're actually winning on gun rights across the board. More than half the country now has constitutional carry or some kind of permitless carry. We have the right to keep and bear arms to a great degree. And I just saw, what is it? They want to ban crossbows now in the UK. Is that the thing?
Yes, because
I'm surprised they were even allowed in the first place.
Well, there's a guy who tied up his ex-girlfriend and a sister and a mum and shot them in the head with a crossbow. So
it's horrible.
It's evil, but it also doesn't mean that every single weapon should be. Because we were just chatting outside. There's a massive knife crime epidemic in
You
London.
haven't banned knives, as far as I know.
Yeah,
It's
well,
on the, it's
no,
on
they
the
have.
ticket,
it's
you
on
know.
the
Not well enough.
It's almost like the Boy
apparently.
Scouts have been carrying pocket knives for years, and there haven't been mass stabbing epidemics. It might be something to do with the people holding the knives that's causing this epidemic. And this is the point I'm going to make about the Constitution. A written Constitution, this is observation from Joseph de Maistre, matters less than what is written in the hearts and in the minds of the legislators. And if you completely change the demographics and the culture of the United States, the Constitution becomes an appeal to mercy, which is why you're winning on gun rights, but it's because it's a defensive posture using law to argue for what was already the assumed culture 100 years ago.
Yes. Yes, the fact that you are pointing out that it was assumed because they're natural rights, just, that is something that obviously does come from, again, as we've been talking about, it comes from the tradition of free Englishmen, and it's something that we in America have taken from, or brought with us, or they brought with them,
100%.
and have given to us as their project.
'Cause you can just look at any other European country, and there isn't a history of being an unarmed citizenry. Right, there's just not, and it's because in a way, I like the way you put it. Like, America is kind of the fulfillment of the English promise, because in a sort of spiritual way, an Englishman should be armed.
Yeah.
He should be armed to defend his home, which is his castle. You've got castle doctrine.
That's
Where
what
do you think that comes
sovereignty
from? There are no
is.
castles here.
That's what sovereignty is.
Exactly, and it comes from the fact that in the Middle Ages, every Englishman was trained to use a war bow. And it's like it genuinely is like embarrassing that you guys have got you've got a handle on this, right? And so obviously I love coming to America and going shooting, because I'm just like, I can. There is something spiritual about it. It's like, this should be how it is.
Well, what happened to you guys? No, seriously. Like,
We lost World War II.
No, that true. There was also a school shooting in Dunblane in Scotland, and then there was a large campaign for disarmament where parents wrote petitions and took them to Parliament.
We didn't have a written constitution that said.
But I actually don't think that is what I would focus on. My question is, how did the culture change to where, what was that cultural?
The lack of the Second Amendment. That's what it is.
I agree. That's why they passed the law, but the United States
It's
has
not
gun
just that.
culture.
Yeah, I know, but the thing is, you have a gun culture because it's codified in your Second Amendment. So every kid in school has this knowledge, and
But that's not why we have a gun culture.
I think it's also
think
to
it
do with the
is.
Second World War. In that, think about the amount of homegrown casualties that Britain took. There wasn't necessarily the ability to pass that on down the chain.
I think that
versus
it-
America.
I will simplify it real quick.
Done.
World War II happens, and most of your strongest men and the strongest men of Europe died.
Yeah.
Partially, but look at, honestly, the size of the United States is part of the reason, because there was so much frontier. And so much frontier for such a long time, you couldn't rely on the police. The police definitely, the law was you taking care of your family on the frontier. So it was the gun culture comes from the fact that you were on your own if you were on the frontier. And the frontier was, we had a frontier until when did California become a state? So it was like 18...
Well, no, actually, no. California became a state while there were still a whole bunch of mountain territories and just basically federal land.
Yeah, so I think that the fact that just the sheer size of the United States and the necessity of having the arms to hunt and to provide for your family and also to defend from the possibility, I think that has a lot to do with it.
Industrial cities were in closer proximity to one another in England than in the States, and also things like street lighting, and then the innovation of Peel's police over here that would have.
But also, that sort of thing's only possible in a culture that has a very high trust culture, where it's in America, you were a lot more social contract culture, right? So it's like, okay, I've got a set of rights and you've got a set of rights and we're not going to come near each other. And if you touch me, whereas in England, it's not quite like that. It's a lot more like tribal, old world culture where it's emotional and sentimental.
You've got like different accents 5 miles apart. It's wild. What percent of the UK would you consider to be wilds?
I don't know about
Wilds?
percentage. But I don't. We don't have much of wilds. We have like cultivated
what do you mean
countryside.
wilds? Nothing in England's wild.
So zero.
Yeah,
No, but the UK as a whole, right?
Yeah, but
So on the British Isles, is there?
there are probably some Scottish islands that haven't got any people on, but nobody goes to those.
There's quite a lot of area in the United States, particularly in the Rockies.
Right.
There's mountains,
I
obviously.
mean, we've got mountain ranges, but like again, everything in Britain, in England in particular, is
Inhabited.
old. So
Right.
it's not just that it's inhabited; it's so old that it's all been domesticated, and we don't have any dangerous animals, and so everyone can just wander around.
That's crazy. We got bears. We got grizzlies.
Yeah, exactly.
And because the population isn't necessarily as mobile as Americans founding made their populations.
Yeah.
Everyone sort of has a tie to the community or they know someone.
100%.
I mean, I think that makes a big difference because so much of the American people, while they might come from shared geographic backgrounds and it might come from England, ultimately there's so much country to fill that they have a certain level of isolation that they don't have to establish this sort of interconnected trust. You could be on your 60-acre plot of land and not see anyone for a long time.
But like what Phil was saying, you do see it in America, right? You do see like small towns that are quite homogenous, that have been there for maybe 100, 120 years, something like that, where that kind of culture has grown up in it. And so you can imagine that most of those guys probably aren't carrying guns, because why would they bother carrying guns, right? Well, imagine a whole country like that, where everyone's very domesticated, very close with one another, very close to the land. And like I said, there are forests and mountains, but like they've got trackways that are 1,000 years old in them.
Right.
Everyone's walked for such a long time. And so it's just not the same. There's no wild land.
Look, this is pretty wild because I pulled up Google Maps.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the UK and I see this green over here and I'm like, okay, there's got to be some trees. And you zoom in, it's houses and farms.
It's all fields. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all people everywhere.
Yeah.
And some trees.
Yeah.
And
if you get to the north of Wales, you'll find Snowdon.
It's a country of hedgerows.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. It's a country of hedgerows. But what does that mean? That means the whole
Where's Snowdon?
thing.
Where's that?
It's the mountain range, just south a little bit. Just you
South
can
a
see
little
it.
bit?
There we go,
This?
right in the middle. No, a little to the right.
To the right?
Yeah, it's about there.
I can't tell. These look like they might be mountains.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
geography.
it'll be around there somewhere. But
Yeah, there you go.
But you're absolutely right with the hedgerows.
Okay.
England, Wales, Scotland, covered in hedgerows, because what these are ancient settlements. Like where farmers, free farmers, have marked off. Okay, well, I've bought this bit, I've got that bit. We've split this between two sons or something like that, and so the whole thing is just an ancient settlement that's grown up over such deep time, like going right the way back to before the Romans had arrived, that it's just not a frontier. And our elites at the moment are treating it like a frontier. Like, right, we're just going to bring in millions and millions of foreigners. It's like, what are you talking about? This is our home.
Anytime someone
our
talks about
garden,
immigration, right, on Twitter, there'll be some midwit leftist who has taken the train out of London for the first time and taken a photo out the window and gone, oh, they say we're too densely populated. Well, I see all this field.
But people do that, going through Wyoming or whatever in the U.S., where it is intensely empty. But part of it is it's very difficult to settle that area. It doesn't have the infrastructure to structure it. And also, I think part of American culture is we like a lot of space and we like a lot of privacy.
Why are you entitled to? Even if you could flat pack build human battery farms from here till the heat death of the universe, why am I entitled to house the entire third world on what is otherwise a beautiful rolling hill?
It doesn't make any sense.
Obviously in Scotland, there's clearly areas
It's
that
very
are
mountainous in Scotland.
Scotland is actually the mountain range, the Appalachian Mountains. That's in Scotland as well.
Yeah.
The Appalachian Mountain Range is older than the Atlantic Ocean.
But in Scotland, if you can zoom in on it a bit, you'll see on the sort of like the north left, right? It's all
around here.
Not uninhabited, but it's all difficult to inhabit mountain ranges, right?
Right.
So the population density there is very low, and I guess you could call that wild,
Yeah,
but it's
that's what I mean.
But it's not the same scale as what you've got in America.
Yeah.
Like when you fly into California, it is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of just
Nothing.
gargantuan mountains or deserts.
But we have forests too.
And forests. We obviously do. The entire sort of Pacific Northwest.
But it is kind of crazy when you look at a map of the U.S. and see how much forest has been eliminated.
Oh yeah,
it's like almost all of it.
We don't have that, and so it's that is.
Did you used to?
not well. I mean, maybe in like
we-
the 6th century.
So we did for a brief while.
Here you go, here's some
the
trees.
forestry was almost entirely
Yeah, we have-
eliminated
we
before
have
the Industrial
forests.
Revolution, and then
Yeah.
the forests that we have actually been regrown since we started centralizing in cities with a manufacturing base.
Yeah, I mean, we do have forests, but like as you can see, if you zoom out again on that particular bit, like you can see that it's quite geometric. Like that's not a natural area of growth. We've
Right.
allowed that bit to grow because we wanted some greenery, right?
I mean, I gotta be honest. Heading down to Colligrin Cottages sounds like a good vacation.
Oh, it's probably lovely.
Look at that river.
Probably lovely.
Absolutely.
You know, but Britain is again very rural as well. So we've got lots of small villages and sort of cathedral cities that are quite small and just in the middle of nowhere, basically.
It is absolutely wild, like the size of London.
But it's the entire country.
Nuts.
England itself is one of the most densely populated countries in the world.
Yeah.
And so to have 1 million new people come in, and the immigrants are coming to England as well. They're not going to Wales. They're not going to
Specifically London.
and Manchester, Birmingham, Luton, which are now these cities. Our biggest cities now majority immigrant, majority minority. Right,
Majority minority.
English people in
Multiculturalism.
Luton, London, I think Leicester as well. About a third of the population, and it's like what?
How's Sheffield?
Oh, it's going to have a huge immigrant population in the center of it, and we're being actively displaced from our own ancient homeland. And it's
But
like, okay, well, what now?
do English people feel any desire to change that? Because so often they hear
100%.
Really?
That's why Nigel Farage was elected in Essex. Right?
That's what I thought. But then
So-
also, you'll hear, I mean, maybe it's just the bias of your sort of media. There,
Which is
it seems
as bad
like
as every
we have an
Democrat
obligation, who we need to help whoever. They floated here across the boat, even though we told them not to. I mean,
They invaded,
it's
yeah.
similar language to what we have, but I think Americans are sort of complacent about preserving the American cultural identity. Do you think British people are as well?
Oh, yeah. So in the sort of like southwest, they're quite complacent about it because it hasn't touched them yet. It's a very sort of liberal area. Whereas if you if you can go to London a second, Tim, right, you can see a little bit east of London. You've got Clacton, which is where Nigel Farage just won, and Clacton has lots of London refugees from diversity. So lots of English people have moved.
What is it called? Where is it?
It's just on. It's a little bit up, I think, from that. It's just like roughly on the right there.
It's one of the
Over here?
seaside towns down near
one of the
down near Southend.
Oh, I see it. Clacton on Sea.
There we go. Yeah.
Is that it?
Right, yeah. So a lot of people from the sort of inner areas of London, a lot of East Enders, have moved from London to Clacton, which is 96% English.
Wow.
From now the 37% London, because they felt they were pushed out by demography, and Nigel Farage comes out and says, well, look, we're going to stop immigration. These people have been directly affected by it. Like they have lost their ancestral homes. Now, these were people we would call Cockneys, right? Cockney first entered the English lexicon in the 13th century, right? Not long after the Norman conquest, the word Cockney was recorded in English. There are no Cockneys left in London, right? The Cockneys have been displaced from ancestral homelands in Britain.
Immediately outside the Wetherspoons, Tim's put the thing there.
What is that? What is
That's
that?
the British pub chain that Nigel Farage essentially campaigned out.
It's a pro-Brexit British pub chain
Yes.
as well.
That's
Tim.
I don't know how.
Tim Martin, isn't it?
Yes.
Let's pull up this story. Let's throw this in there. This is from the AP News. French far-right leader Marine Le Pen is investigated over alleged illicit financing in 2022 vote. They're doing the same thing to Trump. They're doing the same thing to all their allies. We're seeing this happen to Marine Le Pen. No one here is surprised about it. The question is, how do you deal with this level of corruption that is seeking to stop the people from defending their homes?
Don't do anything wrong.
What did she do wrong?
Nothing. But the point.
What did Trump do wrong?
Well, I mean, I actually don't know whether she's done anything wrong. But the only defense about this sort of stuff is literally just have a squeaky clean record, because they'll keep investigating you. There's nothing you can do about it.
Steve Bannon's in prison right now.
I know.
And he didn't do anything wrong.
I know.
Peter Navarro the same.
I know.
Bannon's case is particularly egregious because we've got three co-equal branches of government. The executive branch instructed Bannon not to turn over documents and testify to the legislative branch. And the legislative branch says, if you don't, you'll go to jail. And he's like, but the executive branch will come after me. What do I do? So they put him in prison.
Yeah.
It's
Saying the system's just, man, but it's the system we're working within. There's nothing we can do about it. And Le Pen
Yeah,
is
I
in the
agree,
same
I agree,
position. So all I can really advise is just don't ever cross any of the lines. Don't give them a reason to smack you. You know.
I think that's true. But I think you can add a +1 to that and say be beyond squeaky clean.
Oh yeah,
You know, like with Trump, is it wrong they did classified documents? Well, Biden did too. Pence did. Clinton did. Obama did. Like
very
to varying
petty,
degrees,
isn't it?
right? And Steve Bannon, are they really going to put him in jail over contempt of Congress, especially with executive privilege? Look, everybody in this country speeds. Literally everybody. And actually, I got to be honest, it's annoying to me because out here they speed like 25 over the limit, and I'm like, dude, like 5 is like normal, but you're out in the country and the speed limit's 55 and they're going 80. And if you're not, you're in the way. But that means they could single you out at a moment's notice, and I think 25 over is a felony. I'm not sure. Right. So it's like you've got to be beyond squeaky clean because they will find a way to shut you down. And even if you didn't even do anything wrong, then they're going to make weird tax arguments.
You know, people like Ben Shapiro pay extra in tax just to make sure that he's not going to get crap from the IRS.
Did he say that he does that?
He says he does that every year. Now, I don't know how much extra, but, I mean, it's
any
like...
amount extra is too much, though.
It is, but at the same time, if it's insurance to... It's like you're paying...
Like a
extortion.
Racket.
Exactly. It's like a racket.
But and this is important, too, it all goes towards prepay. So because I did this last year, I paid more, and I was told by my accountant, he's like, so you actually overpaid, and I was like, okay, what does that mean? He goes, it just means that next year it counts towards your taxes, so you're good. And I'm like, okay, cool. So it's that protection. Plus, it's not like you're actually giving, by overpaying, you're covering your costs in the future, and you're avoiding any argument where they can say you were trying to withhold money. You're like, no, I paid extra.
I just really hate it on principle, though.
Yeah.
I just really hate it.
I mean, I don't mind taxes. The problem is the corruption. If the idea was, I don't know, a flat tax, or if it was just tariffs, like back how we used to have it in the olden days, then it's like there is a time and a place for taxes for whatever reasons. We as a society, I think, could agree with. The problem is we're taxed more than half of our income across the board. And so we actually give more of our labor than ancestral the slaves of the ancestral whatever.
You have VAT here as well?
No.
No?
That tax, value-added tax, no.
Don't we have it some places?
I thought it was Texas.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah,
it might
Rather
be
than income tax, I thought it was Texas.
It might be. Well, there are places where there is no, like in New Hampshire, there's no income tax. I know that I'm pretty sure there's no income tax in Florida as well. As for a value-added tax, it might be state by state, but it's definitely not a federal thing. So
I'm sure that there have been, like in California, I'm pretty sure there's a VAT. Because
I think so.
The price wasn't actually the price you'd pay at the till. So $2, and they'd be, oh no, it's
That's
$2.15.
that's sales tax.
Right, sales tax, right.
And that's not a value. That's a different thing than a
Right,
value-added tax.
But in Britain we've got all sorts of taxes on everything.
And you need a license for that.
Probably, yeah.
That's the meme. You got a license for that Diet Coke?
I know. I don't.
Permit?
The TV
No,
license
I'm in the land
blew
of the
my
free.
mind. When I
No,
heard you guys had to have a license to have a television.
The thing about the taxes as well is just what it's spent on. Like,
Exactly.
huge amounts of our tax are going to people who don't deserve it, right? To services you're not using, and to people who are taking advantage of the system. It's a form of institutionalized exploitation.
47% of social housing in London is taken up by people who were not born in the country. 72% of Somalians living in Britain are on social housing. I think it's £14 billion a day £14 billion a year, 10 to 15 million pounds a day that is spent on the hotels for the channel crossers.
This is something that happened. It motivated people to turn out in France, right? You do see these rise in populist movements across Europe, but it doesn't seem to be enough. I mean, there are gains in certain countries, but it doesn't seem like it has reached a dire enough strait for people to say, right, we have to prioritize this now. We cannot let this go on.
A lot of it is the sort of dying gasps of the old order, because they do control the state, they control the media, they control the civil services and all these sort of things. And so they're very good at propagandizing people, and scaring them, frankly, about, wouldn't it be bad if things change? It's like, well, hang on a second, things are getting worse and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So actually, maybe I'll take that chance. But it takes time. These things just take time.
It's a demographic thing as well. So using the UK as an example, the Hobson's choice between Labour and the Conservatives didn't hemorrhage as many losses to the Zero Seats campaign as they could have, because they said Labour will tax your pensions to the boomers. And so they made their policies national service for all those young snowflakes. So they'll either go die in a trench in Ukraine or pick up your prescription or something, and they said we're going to triple lock it. So quadruple lock, sorry. So the triple lock is in place. So if inflation goes up, your pension rises with inflation. It's the only thing that does that. And then also it will be exempt from income tax when it passes the income tax threshold. And so the boomers still voted for the Conservative Party despite the betrayal. And I think this is going to be a demographic thing. As you see it age out, you're seeing more and more young people in Europe, now with Trump, in the US, in the UK for Nigel Farage. They're starting to vote for reform on the populist parties. I think the two-party system, the sort of switching between the teams on a halo match thing, will age out too.
You can already think about how unsustainable these promises are, right? Like, obviously, that's not going to happen. You know, the amount of money that's going to cost is going to keep going up, and the amount of money that's coming into the exchequer is going to keep going down. So, yeah.
I think when you look at the recent election in France, the breakdown of the centrist and the leftist alliance or whatever, if you were to take out all of the non-French native individuals, it's probably, 80? Like, the amount Marine Le Pen would have won, it's going to be everything.
I actually don't know.
She won pretty much everywhere except for Paris in the EU elections. She had her vote share go up in this recent election.
Yeah.
And it's basically the same thing for America, as we see. They vote Republican, and an overwhelming number of minorities vote for left-wing parties in the UK, which is maddening that Farage's party is now pandering to minoritarian concerns rather than the exact kind of people that live in Clacton.
Because he's never going to promise them what Labour's going to promise them. Labour's promised, look, I'm going to give you a free house and loads of English taxpayer money. Farage is going to be like, well, we don't hate you. And it's like, well, no one thought you hate them. Why are you even bringing that up? But you're not promising free stuff, so they're not going to vote for you.
And that's it. Joe Biden in the U.S. said he's going to forgive all these student loans. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't do it. He's like, we did it anyway. He publicly declared that he's in violation of the U.S. Constitution. It happens anyway. We just had a big thing happen recently with Anna Paulina Luna, our rep, where she tried to hold our Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for defying congressional subpoena, and Republicans defected to join the Democrats in saying we will not hold him accountable for the crime he committed. And so I'm sitting here looking at these, and these are 4 Republicans. 3 of them are in safe Republican districts. They're at no risk of losing their seat. One of them he's actually in a Democrat district, and he's lucky to have won in the first place. This is how the game works. The Republicans are pretending like they want to hold Merrick Garland accountable. Likely what happened is the Speaker of the House went to these guys and said, just vote to shut it down. You guys are in safe districts. We won't run anyone against you. You won't lose. You'll be fine. And so we can get all the other guys to pretend and yell out to all of their voters how much they tried, and then they can blame you. But don't worry, because you're going to win anyway because you're in a safe Republican district.
Same thing happens with the Conservatives in the UK. The only people that clung on after this electoral wipeout were the diversity hires that David Cameron put in 2010 after modernising himself, calling himself the heir to Blair. And so the only ones left are the woke ones, like Caroline Noakes, who wants Parliament to be, by fiat, 50-50 male and female.
I think, and this is it might be scary, but I feel with this, the only actual solution is for absolute Democrat supermajority victory.
Welcome to the Labour Party's recent victory in our elections.
Mm-hmm. But what I mean is, so long as the Republicans, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, it's similar, the Conservatives, so long as they keep winning and they hold the chain so it's moving just slightly above the speed limit, people tolerate the destruction. But if the Democrats were to have the chain unleashed and they just won a supermajority across the board and all of a sudden were unrestrained and the United States turned into California overnight, there would be a flash revolution within 4 years.
Well, let's invite Nima Parvini on.
That is exactly what we're hoping is going to happen in Britain. Because this is the exact scenario you've laid out that's happening currently, right now. I mean, the collapse of the Conservative Party, because Nigel Farage ran the Reform Party and split the Conservative vote, basically down the middle, allowed... I mean, we don't have super majorities, but allowed a colossal majority for the Labour Party. 410 seats, 412 seats, something like that. You only need, what was it, 305 or something for a majority? And so it is just, the map is basically red. The Conservatives got absolutely thrashed. The minor parties are so much smaller than the Labour Party that Labour Party has just got the absolute strength to do anything they want, right? And so on day one, they come out and say, well, we're going to start releasing people from prisons.
40,000. He's Bane.
Day one.
Dark Knight Rises.
It's like the most evil left-wing policy is, you know who needs to be back on the street stabbing people? Criminals. You know who? Rape gang.
The grooming gang perpetrator was one of the first people that was let
Literally.
out.
Rapes children. Industrial scale rape of children. They're like, yeah, he needs to be back on the street. It's like, right, okay. So we've got the worst of the left in charge, totally in charge. Right, okay. That's actually kind of good because the Conservatives have fallen into this weird fighting over the ashes mentality, where the incredibly left-wing people who Connor described got parachuted into the safe seats are the powerful people within the Conservative Party. And so at NatCon, Suella Braverman came out and go, hey guys, I'm not sure mutilating children is a great idea. I actually don't support the pride flag. And the Conservative Party, the right-wing party, is melting down over it.
They're threatening to kick her out.
She's probably going to get kicked out.
But this is my point is not that if the left or Labor or whoever wins control, it will cause a pendulum swing. The pendulum has to fall off.
Well, that's the point. That's the point. The Conservatives are going to destroy themselves.
Yeah.
And what this means is that one side of the Uniparty, as Peter Hitchens famously said, two zombies holding each other up. Well, if one falls down, the other one's going to fall down. Because, I mean, Labour Party, what they would always do is just like the Republicans and Democrats. Well, it's my opponent, sir. He is the real problem. He did this, but I will fix it this time. Well, that's not going to be on the table, right? It's going to be 5 straight years of full spectrum Labour dominance. Everything that goes wrong, and a lot is going to go wrong, they'll have no one to point their finger at. Because the Conservative Party will be like, hey, we're leftists just like you anyway.
But then the problem is, what's the alternative party? Is it going to be Reform?
Yes.
Hopefully.
And so you think, hopefully within 5 years, Reform is going to be nationalist, populist, and just sweep. And
If they get their act together,
Yes.
there are some discouraging things happening.
So,
Yep.
what does getting their act together look like?
Professionalizing, making sure they have better candidate selection because
Building
they...
a huge coalition.
Yeah, ensuring you have youth support and a sort of channel to do that. Having essentially an American moment organization that you guys have here where you're training up young people with experience in parliamentary offices, ready to repopulate the civil service when they clear it all out. So on day one, their agenda gets implemented and doesn't get blocked. And is on messaging. Because one of the problems they're having at the moment, leading up to the election, you had Nigel Farage and a man named Lee Anderson. Lee Anderson is like North FC Baz incarnated as a politician.
Working class Englishman.
Yeah, he's fantastic, right? He got kicked out of the Conservative Party. He was high up in the Conservative Party because he said the London Mayor Sadiq Khan has Islamist mates. Now, Sadiq Khan has a long history.
Well documented.
He defended the one surviving terrorist from 9/11. Yeah, so that guy's the London Mayor, and we wonder why we have all these Palestinian protests happening. So the Conservative Party said to Lee Anderson, you're Islamophobic, out you go. And he went, well, guess I'm joining Reform. He got elected, stonking majority. That guy is now the chief whip. He's doing messaging. You'd think they'd be a base party. Well, other members of the party are turning around and putting out very cringeworthy videos going, they say we're all racist, and then it smash cuts to all of their non-white candidates, basically just saying, look, please don't call us mean names. Guys are always going to call us mean names. And after doing that, today they've had a reshuffle, and they have appointed a man named Zaya Yusuf at the top of their organization. Yusuf came in about 3 weeks ago with a massive donation, bought his way onto a rally stage alongside Nigel Farage, and is now the chairman of the party with no track record within the party, no political history before, and actually kicked out one of the best members, a man named Ben Habib, who has been a tireless campaigner for Reform before Nigel Farage came back and before they had any chance. And so if they're going to do this sort of like regime-approved bulletproof armor, they're going to go just left-wing as the Tories. They need to stop.
Well, that's the thing. It's important to note that the messaging is exactly as Phil was saying, right? Like the messaging from Ben Habib is the English are an indigenous ethnic group to the British Isles, right? It was the Anglo-Saxon tribes that came to Britain who became, through a process of ethnogenesis, the English people, and we are not the same. We don't speak the same language as them. We don't, have the same identity as them. Something unique to Britain called England exists. And Ben Habib is very firm on this. He's like, look, the native English population are being discriminated against in a 2-tier policing system and things like this, right? So it's correct messaging. He is right on that. Well, this other chap, Zia Yusuf, has come in and brought across the propositional nation style of speech.
British values.
We're here for our British values, as if the men who fought at Agincourt, who didn't hold modern British values, were somehow less British than
Zia Yusuf,
who holds British values. It's like, well, no, these guys were medieval English yeomen. They couldn't have been more authentically British, but they didn't hold modern British liberal values. And so that's the problem with the propositional nation, is it allows you to kind of substitute out these two things, and it's just not on.
Don't you have a king?
Yeah.
What does he do?
Nothing.
What's he supposed to do?
nothing.
Well, he's supposed to win wars.
He attracts tourists and makes money for the country.
So the at least nominally, the government serves at his behest. It's His Majesty's government. But it is now more of a ceremonial role out of a suggestion of respect.
We're essentially a republic.
What if he tried?
He wouldn't.
Well, no,
Well, I'm not
that's
suggesting
true.
he would,
That's
I'm
true. What if he tried though?
Right.
Great question. Because by all the technical letter of the law,
He could.
Exactly. He absolutely could. He could dissolve Parliament. He could call in the army. He could do anything he wanted. Theoretically, it's just never been tried. Now,
So-
William,
well,
who knows, you know?
The Queen did it.
I'm up for it. you
Hold on,
know?
the Queen did it to Australia,
Right.
I'm not sure about in my lifetime, but within the past 50 years, right?
She did,
The problem you have now is you have Tony Blair's bodies like the Supreme Court and the like that do
Sure.
intervene constantly.
But the question is, are they prepared to die for Parliament?
I
Now-
think,
But
I think they are.
It's
Well, I don't
Charles
know.
now, right?
It is, but the thing is, if you think the last time this happened, it was Oliver Cromwell in the English Civil War, right? In the
Another
1700s.
Charles.
Now-
when was that? Was it 1800s?
No,
1600s.
1640
Wow.
something.
I know nothing about your country.
Yeah, it's a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
We're an old place. And back then, the parliamentarians were prepared to raise an army, fight and die. I don't think parliamentarians now are prepared to raise an army and fight and die against the king. So actually, I think the king would be able to sweep it quite easily.
And I also kind of feel like, aren't the people of Britain, the English, very?
Very royalist, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they love the royal family.
Yeah, they do.
The English do.
Yeah, the English.
Right.
The English, yeah.
So
Well,
I
the
wonder.
Welsh, the Welsh are quite fond as well.
Well, I'm talking about the people that are not historically English.
Those with British values, Phil is
Yeah.
talking
But
about.
I wonder if it's Charles now, right?
Yeah.
Is there? I mean, how old is he? He's very old.
70s.
Yeah, he's
And he's pancreatic.
Is there-
prostate cancer, right?
yeah.
Wow. Is there no? Certainly, every human being longs for what they had in their childhood to a certain degree. We think back to what our neighborhoods used to look like. We think about music and we say, "Oh man, remember this?" And there's nostalgia. Certainly, I'd imagine, isn't he looking at things with fear?
He's,
You
a, he's
aware
a
that-
globalist eco warrior.
You where he
lefty.
helped establish the World Economic Forum.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Then maybe this has always been the intended condition of the British Empire. I mean, you look at it's look, you guys go to India, right? And you take all their food and bring it back and then add fat and salt and sugar to it. And now look what everyone's eating.
And refrigeration.
Look what you did.
Yeah.
So
That's the reason Indian food's so spicy. It was to cover up the fact it was rotten in the heat.
this may have always been the goal of the British royal machine.
Maybe.
I don't think so, no. And I will go back slightly and disagree a little bit with just how Machiavellian the elites are with importing all of these third worlders. Yes, they would like to inflict a narco-tyranny on us and have a sort of mothering TSA-style state to constantly monitor all of our relationships, but a lot of them are really stupid, and a lot of them are true believers, and they genuinely believe that by virtue of making contact with the magic soil or stepping through the portal of the passport gate at Gatwick or Heathrow, that the most ardent jihadian will dissolve his identity in secular liberal capitalism. And this is why all of the Palestine protests, when the cenotaph was being respected by people at the Armistice Day, when British servicemen held the Union Jack, you had police officers walking up to them and saying, "You need to lower that. And there are more than them and there are of us." And what that means is that an expression of your culture is seen as a provocation.
Well, you're conquered.
Well, it's not just conquering. It's they think you can dissolve everyone into this sort of like blender of non-identity.
Right.
I think Tim's actually right. I think that the giveaway here is there's more of them than there are of us. What the British police were saying is that by using the first person plural and not including the Palestinian protesters is admitting that no, we're not the police of those people.
He thinks that, but the elites aren't
Oh, yes.
necessarily thinking of a conscious
So,
conquering. They're
what-
thinking that we'll have this universal cosmopolitanism and we'll all sing John Lennon's Imagine.
What did you guys do when you took Ireland?
Well, which time?
I mean, like, you suppressing.
Well, I mean it's like the Normans first went over in the 13th century, and it's probably been 3 different conquests.
What happened to the Irish people under forced rule from England? I mean,
Oh well, what would we?
the cultural erasure.
Yeah, there was. That was. I think that was the sort of later thing, though, because what really it was initially in the sort of medieval view, it was treated as sort of fiefdoms, right? So you get an Anglo-Norman baron or duke or knight or something like that who'd be put in charge of a bunch of Irish peasants.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I think it was probably 1800s, 1900s, something like that, where the actual active cultural Anglicization of Ireland took place. So, but I'm not an expert on that. So,
But I bring it up just because typically what you see with a nation being conquered is the elimination of their cultural identity.
yeah,
And so, you look in the modern era, especially with social media, we are no longer in time period. I mean, we describe it as fifth generational warfare. Psychological manipulation is the effective tactic for dominating and conquering a group of people so that they do what you want them to do. So you don't need to invade. Or I should say this. There's still an invasion, but you don't need to march in with weapons and subjugate and then fight for decades to erase their identity. It's subtle. It's through media. It's through shame. It's through selective policing. It's like going up to a man with the Union Jack and saying, you can't fly that flag, it's offensive, while people fly rainbow flags.
Or Palestine flags.
That because your identity must be suppressed.
Well, there's a dark reason why every time anyone mentions, the birth rate is collapsing in all sorts of Western countries. But don't worry, we have immigration to solve that. I mean, they don't look at the people who are native to a country as being valuable because they are native to the country. They say, you guys are very difficult to deal with and we'd like some new people.
Well, this is what Camus meant by that phrase that is a conspiracy theory that I can't utter, otherwise I'll get you demonetized. But that Vivek Ramaswamy and Tucker Carlson has said time and time again, he didn't mean a conscious plan to replace one ethnic group with another. He meant that you're just seeing the entire world as undifferentiated human mass that you can just carve a bit of and drop it where the market demands. And so there was a research study by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation recently that said by 2100, all but 6 countries in the world are going to have sub-replacement birth rates. And rather than tackle that through policy or say, maybe we shouldn't gaslight young people into believing that they shouldn't have children because of climate change or racism, they said, it's all right, we'll just take everyone from Sierra Leone and redistribute them accordingly.
And also, just a quick thing there. Like, notice the linguistic sleight of hand to this, right? So, okay, what's the problem? Well, let's take France. So, French people aren't having enough children. Okay, what's the solution? Well, we bring in non-French people. Well, that doesn't make French people have babies. It doesn't.
Well, I don't think they want the French people themselves to have.
Of course, but the point being, they've already talked past the sale, right? So it's like, we can solve that problem by bringing immigrants, but that doesn't solve the problem of French people not having babies. What that solves is the problem, which is labour shortages down the line. But that wasn't the issue. That wasn't what we were talking about. Labour shortages are actually quite good for workers. Actually, it means you get more money. But the issue has been completely diverted now to an external problem. The external problem of the system itself, the entire thing. And that reveals the managerial perspective on things. Then you're just numbers on a spreadsheet. You're just numbers on a spreadsheet. We don't care about the continuity of your communities. We don't care that 1,000 generations of Frenchmen will just go extinct. That doesn't bother us at all. That problem isn't a problem. The problem is the labour shortage, as you were saying.
Couples that are struggling with infertility that desperately want to have their own children are not necessarily fulfilled by the fact that we have allowed immigrants into the country.
It doesn't solve their problem.
It doesn't actually help them at all.
Yeah. So we're screwed.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have looked to the English for optimism, Tim. Sorry.
It's going bad over there.
I think it's a good dose of reality, though. I think Americans sort of have a romantic view of England, and it's good to be realistic about what happens, especially since you are a smaller geographic scale.
And that old romantic England does still exist, but you can see the rot has set in everywhere.
That's something that's honestly going on throughout like all of Western society, because and you see it. The United States is probably the most insulated. And I think that there's probably multiple reasons for that. But you see it definitely in Canada. You see it in Australia. You see it in New Zealand. All of the Western countries. Obviously, you see it all over Europe. The idea that a nation should be a nation, or that a people should have a nation. Like, there's only a handful of places where people will even argue about that. Like
Japan and Israel.
Yeah, Israel, exactly. Israel and Japan. And I've said before, I don't see a problem with a people being connected to their country and saying,
I just want what Israel has, man. I just want what Israel has.
It just sounds bonkers when you frame it in the way that is just honest.
Good.
No, you wrap it up.
It's just that, I understand why the United States is different, because we actually came from something that is less dependent on the people that are there. It is something that has been more open than other cultures and other countries in the past. But a place like England, or like Ireland, or like France or Germany, like for them to say, we want to have, our country remain our country and our history remain our history and our culture remain our culture. I can't understand why there are so many people that accept the idea that that is bad.
We'll discuss that tomorrow.
I want to talk more about the state of Europe, where this is all going, and I think it's better left for the members only uncensored portion of the show, because this is where we get into historic, like we can look to history, we can see how things have gone in the past, and we can make predictions about the future, and these are not good predictions, and they're very worrying. So we'll keep that one to the members only, and in the meantime, we'll go to your super chats. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member. We're going to have at about 10 p.m. the members only uncensored portion of the show where you as members get to call in. And I want to talk about the dark predictions for what happens to Europe if all of these things are happening. And it may be a bit dark, so we'll keep it for the uncensored show, too. And I think you guys will have some ideas to pitch in for that one. But we'll grab your super chats. We got Fixed Bayonet says, we are not Rome. We are the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
I think you're a bit more enterprising than the Austro-Hungarians. They're a bit landlocked.
Yes. All right. Fockett says, I'm getting tired of going to the skate park to see people vaping or smoking weed at 10 a.m. Don't want to visit the Martinsburg skate park if that culture persists. Do what you want, but seriously at 10 a.m. I completely agree. I that's one of the worst things about you go to a skate park. Look, I want to go to a skate park and people are hanging out in there skateboarding. And the only substance being consumed is going to be water, sodas, energy drinks, or whatever. You want to have an energy drink? Do your thing, right? But you go to a lot of these parks, and it's an excuse for people who don't care about skateboarding to just smoke and occupy space. So that's a cultural thing that we need to fix. If you live in a state where it's legal and recreational, fine, but keep it away from the kids.
I don't know. I'm not even fine with it, to be honest. It's kind of, I've smoked weed before plenty of times, and it's just, it's not something that should be accepted.
We are going to have a great conversation tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be a big component of it too, and I agree. And I don't want to get into the debate.
I'm not even like angry about it or anything
right.
like that. It's something, you do these things, but they shouldn't be accepted, and you should be in some way slightly ashamed of it, right?
I agree. And tomorrow morning on the Culture War podcast, we're all coming back, and we're going to debate liberalism. And
destroy Phil.
Yeah, Phil. So it's basically Phil pro. The Lotus Eaters' friends are anti.
We're also anti in different directions.
Interesting.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, you're.
And then I actually am probably in between you guys to a certain degree, but I feel like I'd probably lean towards your guys' direction.
Yeah.
The
thing is, it's not even like I'm happy that this is the case. I would actually be happier if it wasn't the case. It's just I've done a degree in philosophy now, and I know all the facts of it, and it's just. This isn't going to hold, So I'm kind of with a sad heart. I've got to be. Like,
it's gonna be one of those shows where it like flies by, and before we know it, we're like on hour 3.
Yeah.
So we'll try and keep it. I'm
gonna end up being late for PCC tomorrow.
No, we'll make sure we don't go over But I feel like it's gonna be fun, funny, and it's gonna be enlightening. So that's tomorrow morning on Tenet Media on YouTube. Subscribe, but we'll read some more super chats. Seth West says, "Glad you have these two on. This should be a great episode, a grand episode." Absolutely. I wish you guys weren't so far away. We'd have you on more often.
I think it's been brilliant.
Yeah, we hope you performed as expected.
Yeah, absolutely. Hugo says, so glad I could be here to catch Timcast of the Lotus Eaters live. Much love to our brothers across the pond. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And of course, for those who don't know, Carl helped me launch my YouTube career.
Hell yeah.
I had just left Fusion. I had started producing some YouTube content. My channel was very small. Carl hit me up and said, why don't you produce a guest segment? I talked about how the media lies. It did really well. Knocked me right over 100,000 subscribers and allowed me to make money off of YouTube after that boost. So Carl is always welcome. He's a good friend, and he is the Great Britain to my America.
This is back in the This Week in Stupid days.
Oh yeah,
right? Oh yeah,
like 2017 or something like that.
I think it was 2017. Yeah, Berkeley.
Yeah,
good fun.
But the thing is, the reason I did that is because Tim, I'd met Tim, and you weren't someone with a big name or anything, and you were just totally cool, totally respectable, totally helpful to me when I was going out and doing stuff. Because I was in America, I didn't know anything about America, and you were just a really good guy. And I was like, okay, well, great. He's honest, he's trustworthy, and he knows what he's talking about.
I think what had happened was after I left Fusion, you watched some of my streams or something, and you said something where you were like, he's not lying.
Yeah, exactly. The one
telling the
journo
truth.
who's not lying. I want to give him a platform.
Yeah.
Literally.
It's great.
Yeah, and it worked out. And you had a few other people who did like a guest thing.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah, and then the video did really well. I got inundated with all these people being like, "Your video was awesome." And then I remember looking at the subscriber count where I was in my hotel and it went like 100,000. I was like, "Holy crap!" When I got home, like a week later, I looked at my monthly revenue and I was like, "I am making a living now." And it was a couple grand, but I was like, "Pays my bills."
It changed the direction of your life, I think.
I would assume that it's all part of the dominoes falling over. That be it Carl and then because obviously what happens then is a year later Joe Rogan says something similar like, "Hey, come on my show, you're doing really well," and then that does another big jump, and that's kind of how it goes. But
I got a massive jump off Rogan as well.
Yeah,
This is a huge audience.
But that's how it starts. You know what I mean? And who knows? It could have taken. We might not be here right now were it not for Carl. I imagine there'd be a YouTube channel. I'd imagine I'd be doing something similar. It could be dramatically smaller.
Yeah.
Who knows? But it is always good fun. And then we've had a handful of people who've come on this show and have similar experiences and everything. So it's all part of that cycle. And then by the time I'm like 60 or 70, there'll be some kid who's 35 or 40 who's at 10 million subs, and he's like, "Well, I went on Timcast back 10, 15 years ago," and that's how it goes, man.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Alex Mass says, "Carl, not sure the Colonel Sanders look suits you."
It's not a white suit. What are you talking about? I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
It looks proper and posh.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
All right.
It's hot.
Big David says, "Dear Phil, I would like to court our granddaughter Hannah Claire. I promise to strive for 10 children."
Good.
You guys know the rules. You have to contact my dad and get a dowry set up and negotiate the rate of goats or hay or whatever you trade in your culture.
Excellent.
Nathan Gibson says, "You should have Carl on weekly. He's amazing."
Oh, man, I hate traveling. I hate traveling more than life itself. I hate everything about
He has a family and a bunch of kids that he has to raise.
And also an entire business that you could just watch alongside Timcast.
That's true. Yeah. But the thing for me, you get those people who are just like, "Oh, I can't wait to go on holiday. I can't wait to go on holiday." And I'm the opposite, right? I hate going on holiday because I love my life.
We're shy folk.
Yeah. But I've got like my house, my kids, my wife, and my business, and like I've built my life so I don't feel the need to escape it.
Yep.
And that's what you should try and do. Try and make a life that you don't feel the need to escape. So going on holiday and going places like this in a way feels like a bit of a burden. It's like, oh god, okay, fine, I'll do it for Tim, but like it wouldn't be for anyone else. You know what I mean?
I mean, even though you call this holiday, it's like this is still
not a holiday.
kind of working, and it's doing the same thing or a similar thing to what you do at work. So
We were exceptionally productive at NatCon. We have some very interesting meetings.
Lots of good stuff is coming.
good stuff.
I think that's good advice, though. You should build a life that you don't want to leave. You don't want to
100%.
avoid for
Yeah.
vacation.
Samurai says, "This is the podcast that I knew I needed but wasn't sure I'd ever get. Viva America and Viva Britain."
Yeah.
Love it.
Absolutely.
I love the sort of international alliance of nations
Yeah.
coming together. People who love their countries.
Yeah.
This is the thing, right? There was someone said that it might have been Nigel Farage about an international alliance of nationalism.
Yeah.
And the media, and they know what it means.
Yeah.
But they started mocking it
Yeah. As if this is ridiculous.
because their midwit and low IQ people were like, international, national, you're so dumb. And it's like, what they're saying is we're going to respect each other's sovereignty and work towards allowing each other to remain sovereign.
Celebrate diversity.
Yeah, that's literally what it is. I'm surprisingly popular with Irish nationalists because I'm very pro Ireland's natural culture being Irish.
Yeah.
Like, and why wouldn't I be? Why wouldn't I be? It'd be crazy not to be.
I can't believe I'm cheering on a Frenchman in the avatar of Jean Baudelaire, but there you go. You have it.
It's like, okay, I'm actually pro France.
All right, Limerickman says, "Tim, you're incorrect about Ireland and Schengen. Ireland, UK, Channel Islands, and Isle of Man are part of the common area. Many non-EU states are part of Schengen area."
Yeah, we should have called you up on it, but it's
I don't know enough about it.
It's something that changed as of 2020. So
but it also boils down to basically what you're saying.
Oh, okay. I was there
you can
before
just
that.
you can just walk across the Irish border.
When I think I was there, it might have been like 2018.
Yeah.
And I had been talking to someone about like, hey, if we go to Ireland, do we just like, how do we do it? Is it passport control? And they're like, no, you just drive.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, hold on. I was like, I thought this was a big deal.
Yeah.
And they were like, it was, but because of the EU, basically, all of a sudden, it's not, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, basically, it would have been a big deal if the European Union had actually put up a border. Because, I mean, either Britain or the European Union could have put up a border, and during the Brexit negotiations, it was a contentious issue. And we just sidestepped it by just not putting up a border with Ireland. And so that leaves the ball in their court. So, but yeah, it's a small quibbling sort of technicality that they've got you on there, but it's not a big deal.
Ethan Inglis says, life is good. First show back after my honeymoon. My wife is pregnant with our first child.
Congratulations.
And my 2 favorite shows doing the most ambitious crossover in history.
That's awesome.
Best of luck with UK and US from rural Straya.
See, that's a guy who's not desperate to go on holiday. That's a guy who's got it all sorted out.
Dude, I traveled to see family for the 4th of July weekend. We had a 4-day weekend. It was fantastic, but flying sucks.
It is so much.
When I'm in my 20s and I was flying twice a week. I was like, this is great. Where am I off to next? And I'd earned status from flying so much. So I was always first class. I was executive premium. And so you buy a coach ticket, you're first class every time. And now it's just like, oh, jeez.
Well, everything's delayed because of the competency crisis. Like, I was delayed flying out of Heathrow for 5 hours because they forgot to refuel my plane.
Wow, they forgot.
They genuinely forgot.
You see the 2 planes that almost crashed recently?
Yeah, really.
That's great. They were within 600 feet of each other. That's great. They were right, and then one turned right to move away. That's wild. And yeah, but anyway, we got to travel for the RNC on Saturday. So tomorrow night's show, as soon as it's over, we go to the airport because our flight's super early in the morning, and it's just like I don't get to sleep.
Yeah, I hate it.
This is why when the whole Patrick Bet David thing happened, did you guys see that one?
Was this about booking the private jet thing, and there was this spat about time and
So he calls me a liar and says I wanted a private jet or I wouldn't come, and it's like the real context was they had asked our PR person if I could do the show, and they said there's no way for Tim to get there Saturday morning. He does a show Friday night. Is private an option? Then he can get there in an hour. And they said we don't do that. And they said okay, that was the end of it. And then
logistical question: would you ever? Because I had to pre-record my show just to go out on like Wednesday when I was here. Is pre-recording ever out of the question, or?
The issue is I do 2 shows. I do the morning show and the night show.
Yep.
And then we have pre-booked guests months in advance.
Right.
So it's like, it's brutal.
Yeah, you can't just cancel them on them.
Yeah. But usually if we have to, like I'm not flying private to go to the RNC. We have the weekend. But it is super brutal to travel on Saturday because I'm not going to get any sleep. I'm going to be on a plane. I'm going to try and take a nap maybe. Then Sunday I get to wake up and start getting ready because it's like, so it basically means I will work Monday to Friday, get little sleep and travel on Saturday, have some time on Sunday to get my bearings and what the plan is. But we also have to do audio tests and make sure everything's working properly. Otherwise, I got to fly back to do the show here. Then I work Monday to Friday. And then Saturday, Saturday, I will get to hang out in Milwaukee and maybe play some Magic the Gathering with Jeremy, over at the Quartering. Yeah, he's going to come on a couple of our shows. Really excited to have him.
Yeah, I destroyed him at Magic as well.
But then basically I'll get 1 day off in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it is rough. All right, let's get some more. We got Ajax Slamgood. He says, I am a combat medic and later became a therapist and a behavioral specialist. He is in the first quarter of dementia. We as soldiers, were left behind in his botched escape program.
Yep.
I do think I'm not a doctor. I think Biden has early...
I don't think you have to be a doctor.
Right. So the argument they made after the debate, the media, when I say they, was that he's not suffering dementia. It's just age-related decline. Like he stumbles over his words. But dementia's different. Dementia is when you confuse things, use the wrong names, perhaps don't speak proper words or walk the wrong way and get lost. And I was like, that's exactly what he's doing. Yeah. There was that one moment where he's on stage and he turned around and started talking to the wall. I'm like,
he had some very interesting points. He really had to see what its perspective.
He's an
was.
Oblivion NPC.
I would like to congratulate President Putin there.
Did you notice that
poor
during
Oblivion.
his press release today, his address today, he was like, I'm getting all kinds of, crap from my wife. Like Joe Biden is the one berating him behind the scenes. Things seem very sad for Biden. I don't like it.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think he's a corrupt rapist. So
yeah,
I don't. Well, I mean, I
don't feel any.
I only think that because I read Ashley Biden's diaries.
Yeah.
So I'm not very sympathetic to him.
Yeah.
Mark Giadetti says Sargon for king of an independent Wessex.
Oh, that sounds good.
No, Dan will fight you for that title.
And I'll win.
Beef Nasty says, I was born in Naperville, raised in Naperville, live in Naperville. I'm a Chicagoan.
Good man.
We had a guest once, And I was like, so where are you from? And she was like, Chicago. And I was like, so Naperville? And she was like, how did you know that? So Naperville's a suburb.
Right.
For whatever reason, 80% of the time I meet someone outside of Chicago who says they're from Chicago, they're from Naperville, which is a southwest suburb of the city. It's well off. And so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know.
This used to happen to me. I grew up 2 hours outside of New York City. You know, a lot of people's parents commuted on the train lines, but you would have people at my high school in Connecticut say, oh, well, I'm a New Yorker. It's like, you're definitely not. They're like, well, I was born in New York City, but have you lived there any time since? And they're like, well, no, but there's sort of this want to claim the nearest urban city, which I just don't care about.
New York used to be a really prestigious place, though, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Now it's sucks.
Yeah. Well, it was bad in the 80s, late 70s and 80s too, you know, but you know. Kent Pittsburgh says, Carl, been a member of the Lotus Eater since November. Really like Lads Hour, where lads are just being lads.
Thank you.
Also, what do you mean you don't have dangerous animals? You have big cats in Britain.
That is true. They
Don't get him started on
They've
this.
never attacked anyone, though, as far as I'm aware.
Like mountain lions?
Yeah, well, leopards, actually, specifically black leopards. So the story with it is that during the British Empire, of course, you have Brits going around the world, conquering, exploring new lands, and bringing back strange animals. And so people used to keep leopards and things like that as exotic pets. And then in, I think it was the 1960s, the Labour government came in and said, right, we're banning this. But they made no provision with what to do with these animals, so people just let them out.
And now they're wild. And
Now they reckon there's a breeding population of about 250 in the UK, but like I said, they haven't actually attacked any.
oh man, that's hilarious.
Yeah, but they have found genetic evidence of them
Is their crime rate lower than the migrant crime rate?
way lower. I mean, they haven't committed any crimes yet, whereas the migrants obviously have.
Maybe littering or something. Public indecency.
Maybe no. They've literally been very good guests.
All right. Okay, here we go. Kevin Baker says, fun fact. Thomas Jefferson originally planned to feature, it's Hengist? Is it Hengist and Horsa on the back of the U.S. seal,
Nice.
which would have also featured Moses and Hercules. He should have.
He should have. That was
Yeah,
very
absolutely should have.
Like, when we win, I'm going to set up giant statues of Hengist and Horsa.
What do we have now? We have like an eagle with like an olive branch and arrows. That's like this U.S. seal. And then we also have on the back of the dollar the all-seeing eye. It's like, come on, dude.
Yeah, that's cringe.
Yeah, be original. It's great.
Yeah.
That was a call to their masonry, their mason stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Greg Beaudry says Biden is not delusional for staying in the race. He executed an immigration policy that could potentially add millions of votes to the Democratic Party base or seats in Congress through the census. Why would he hand his winning strategy over to another candidate?
To be fair, that's a good point.
So are you familiar with how our Congress works at all? We have 435. It's 435 seats, and every 10 years we do a census and then divide up the districts to each state based on how many people they have. And so what's happened is California, for instance, in the last census is estimated to have between 1 to 7 extra seats because non-citizens are counted in our census.
Right.
So that means what Democrats are doing with what they call sanctuary citizen states, where they don't deport illegal immigrants, is that the maximum voting population might be 650,000,
Yeah.
which leaves about 100,000 people. And I'm saying for like California and specific areas that are high illegal immigrant population, you will have a captured population that cannot vote.
This also counteracts the fact that their policies are making American citizens flee those states to
So
Republican strongholds.
they're basically, rather than gerrymandering a district, they're gerrymandering the electorate.
Yes. So that means they get extra votes in the Electoral College.
Yeah.
So if you look at, I think if you assess generally what Americans do want, without any political games or whatever, you'd probably see a Trump landslide.
Yeah.
If it was based on the questions.
It'd be
of
like
just,
Nixon, wouldn't it?
But what we end up with is there are, the arguments come from Republicans often that illegal immigrants are voting. I think that's a big threat right now, especially with some of these stories we're tracking. The Help America Vote verification system is a weird scandal. But the real issue is they don't need to vote. We are an electoral college system. Yeah. If they bring in 1 million non-citizens and spread them out throughout California, their presence adds to electoral college vote. So there's an electoral vote for each member of Congress, and I think D.C., right? Is that where the 3 come from?
I think so.
There's 3 for D.C., so it's 538 electoral votes. The problem is California was estimated to have between 1 and 7 extra votes. So the will of California is crushing. Yeah, that's bad.
This is why the Electoral College is just such an obviously good idea.
Well, it is a very good idea. Yeah.
Which is why they want to get rid of it.
Exactly.
Of course.
Yeah, but there is an interesting. I would say this. There's an interesting debate to be had about it, because there's the obvious reason for it, which is the example I love to give is California, Tulare County, east of like LA and San Diego. It's in the southeast, farming area, and they had surface water during the drought 10 years ago. San Diego, Los Angeles, dense population centers. So they vote. What happens? The farmers have to give up their water. This area with 350,000 people no longer has access to surface water, because even though the water is literally on their property, city folk voted, it's our water now. The minority population literally lost the water of where they live so that city people could take it from them. That seems to make no sense. The idea of the Electoral College was we're going to balance out basically the 2 extra votes each state gets through the Senate. We want to have some balancing force so that California can't take the water from Illinois.
Yeah.
Some separate, like it's a republic. We got to have that kind of.
They knew the cities would dominate the countryside.
But even then, it was conceived of with a relatively homogenous population. And in the age of mass demographic change, actually, constitutions and voter registration and voting systems don't really matter all that much.
Yep. Yeah. I'm sure you guys are aware of this. Our listeners are aware of this, but laws don't matter. What matters is what a culture is willing to tolerate. Because right now we got a ton of laws in the books that are not being upheld.
Yep.
For example, the one I like to give is that in West Virginia, particularly in Berkeley County where we are, drag shows illegal, and including children is an aggravation. Yet they still have done drag shows. They did this in Martinsburg with children on stage. And this falls under I went through the laws. There's like 4 or 5 statutes about lewd and lascivious behavior, how it's defined. And if someone wants to make the argument that we should be more progressive, fine. Law's still on the books. And these public displays are illegal, but the police won't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys saw that video from Tenet. Taylor Hansen caught 2 adult men engaging in adult behaviors in public in San Francisco on a public street, and the cop said, it's they can do whatever they want. Like, choose your battles. You know what I mean?
I didn't see that, but I'm not surprised.
And he posted the video of it, and these conservatives are like, "Don't post that, don't share that." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, people need to know this stuff's happening."
Yeah.
But that's what they tolerate in California. Let's grab a couple more super chats. We got time for one good one. Kevin Simmons says, Carl introduced me to Tim during This Week in Stupid Days, and he also introduced me to Jordan Peterson with his early defense. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Carl and the fruit of his work saved my life.
Wow.
OG right here, man.
Dude, I've just been doing the best I can.
It's you were like, are you the OG of Gamergate? Like the first, one of the first?
There were lots of people who were supporting that, but I saw what was happening. I saw that it was just a popular revolt against woke ideologues who had a narrow minority of woke ideologues who had the mechanisms of power in that industry, and it was a popular revolt against them. And I saw that very quickly, and that's why I supported it, because that's what has to happen. We've got to fight back.
How that has expanded. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just all Gamergate all the time now. Yeah. Everything everyone does.
You just wanted to play video games.
Yeah.
Yep.
But now it's full spectrum. Like, everyone's doing it everywhere, because everyone can see this woke hegemony is going to literally make abominations out of our civilizations if we don't make it stop.
The before we go to the members only uncensored show, it's funny how you say that meme, like, why I just wanted to play video games, and back then we were all much younger, and we were talking 12 years ago 11, 12 years ago. And we're a lot younger, and we're a bit more it's a bit more irreverent because we're talking about the video game industry and movies. Now it is the highest echelon of government. So with that being said, smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, head over to timcast.com, click join us. We're going to talk about the future of Europe and the United States and what it means that we're seeing mass migration and Marine Le Pen, the investigations against her, Donald Trump. It'll be a little spicy. So again, timcast.com, click join us. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Carl, do you want to shout anything out?
Oh, yeah. Just come and support us at lotuseaters.com. We've got a podcast of the Lotus Eaters on YouTube, and thanks for all the support over the years.
Absolutely.
Likewise, you can watch Tomlinson Talks on Wednesdays at lotuseaters.com. Also, deprogrammed on the New Culture Forum, one of our good friendly outlets.
Friends. Yep.
Follow us on Twitter at Sargon of Akkad and Con_Tomlinson.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can catch us this summer on the Destroy All Enemies tour with Megadeth and Mudvayne starting August 2nd going through until September 29th. We have a new video out. It's called Let You Go. You can check it out on Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, Deezer, YouTube, the internet. And don't forget, the left lane is for crime, so move over if you're not breaking the law. Hannah Claire.
It's been so fun having you both here. I'm glad you could join us in the new studio. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. Follow all of their work at Timcast News on the internet. I'm on Instagram at hannahclaire.b, and I'm on Twitter at hannahclaireb. Thanks for everything you guys do. Have a good night.
We will see you all over at timcast.com in about 1 minute. Thanks for hanging out.